Thank you. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a couple of minutes past 7 o'clock, Wednesday, December the 8th, 2021. This is a regular meeting of Midland Council, and it's being held virtually. It will be broadcast on channel 53. I got it. There we go. And not on BNN. And we will also be recording it, and it'll be available on our YouTube site. So with that, we have been meeting in closed session to discuss some items with respect to the new market tape power. We've risen from the closed session, and I have a motion to read and ask council's approval of prior to going forward. That motion reads as moved by Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Downer. The council acknowledges and accepts the confidential information provided by the Chief Administrative Officer at the closed session meeting of council held December 8th, 2021 with respect to the new market tape power SPA discussion, and confirms the direction provided to the Chief Administrative Officer on how to proceed, and that council authorizes and directs the Chief Administrative Officer to do all things necessary and to execute all documents required in order to carry out that direction. So basically, you've heard the motion. Council, comments or questions with respect to the motion? Deputy Mayor.
My apologies, I thought we were voting.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That carries with two saying no, 3 saying no. So that's 3 no, so the motion carries. Thank you very much. And
Your worship, I think that was 4. Perhaps you could call the people that are against that.
those opposed. 2, 3, 4. That carries. Thank you. You were right as 4. Thank you for that clarification. So I would just go backwards now a little bit and read the land acknowledgement once more, since we're now in open session. And it's just basically the town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of Bosley First Nation, Rama First Nation, and the Georgina Island First Nation. This territory is within the Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and Treaty 16, and included within the Williams Treaties of 1923. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the historic homelands of the Métis, and that our town is home to a large and diverse community of Indigenous people. With that, I would ask you to join me in a moment of silent reflection and consider those folks who are without over the Christmas period, and think about how we might support them. Thank you, Council. I'm going to go off the normal script here for a little bit. And we have 2 guests with us this evening, the new board chair for the Midland Public Library, and also the Ms. Kim Weischer, and we also have the new CEO, Chief Librarian, Ms. Patricia Hayes. And I think we all know the value that the library provides to the community as a community hub, place where people get together and do particular activities, distribution of books, such as the mini libraries, one of which hopefully is still outside of Councillor Shefsky's home. And just so we thought it appropriate that Ms. Wishar introduce herself and then introduce Mrs. Hayes as the new CEO. So over to both of you. Ms. Wishar.
Good evening, and thank you so much for the opportunity to join you, Mr. Mayor and councillors and town staff, and for this opportunity for myself. I'm Kim Weiser. I'm a longtime resident of Midland and recognize a number of your names here on the screen. And I've been a member of the library board for about 18 months and became the chair in the spring. And I'm my day job, I'm a superintendent of education with the Catholic School Board here in Simcoe, Muskoka. And I really believe in libraries and the power that libraries have to serve communities and to do so much more than just the books back and forth. And I think the Midland Public Library is definitely an example of the wonderful work that libraries can do. So I'm so pleased this evening to have the opportunity to introduce Trish Hayes, who has taken over as the CEO and Chief Librarian of Midland Public Library as of October the 18th. Trish comes to us with a wealth of experience in library services. She's worked for more than 30 years in library management and working with public libraries, and built her career at the Library Services Center, where she was the Vice President of Sales and Marketing since 2018. Before that, she was the Vice President of Services, Vice President of Operations, and Manager of Cataloging and Customer Services. She's known throughout public libraries as a strong relationship builder and successfully has helped libraries implement new services and practices to improve and expand public engagement and ensure collections meet the diverse needs of communities. We were really excited when Trish applied and we were able to offer her and she accepted the position. She has amazing experiences, particularly around marketing and understanding of library services, which I think she's going to definitely bring to the Midland Public Library. She's very highly respected within the public library sector, and we so look forward to working with Trish to continue the incredible work that the library is doing. So Trish, I wasn't sure if you wanted to say a few words.
I just wanted to say what a pleasure it is to meet everybody this evening. And I've already had the privilege of meeting some of the council members at the library. But I'd like to welcome you all to come and visit us so we can discuss all the wonderful services and programs that we provide the community, as well as some of the new initiatives that we're looking at next year. I'm also very looking forward to working with the town management team to make sure the library understands the changing and emerging needs of the community as it grows, and we can meet those challenges. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at the library soon.
Thank you very much to both of you, and welcome to each to your new respective roles. Looking forward to what's to come, and certainly you've got a very talented team, I think, on the board, and certainly in Ms. Hayes. Looking forward to great things, and I know you'll enjoy your time here in Midlands, as we will, I think, enjoying the programming and so on that comes forward from the library. So welcome, and all the best of the season too, lest I forget. So thank you again, and as I say, welcome. On behalf of council, on behalf of staff, I know that Mr. Dino is looking forward to working with you and building better. I don't know whose slogan that was. It might have been missed in the States, but building better. Absolutely. Thank you. You're welcome. Good night. I now have a motion with respect to the agenda, and it's moved by Councillor McGinn, seconded by Councillor Shefsky, that the contents of the regular council of closed session agenda for December 8th, 2021 be approved as amended by removing item 10.4.1, CSR-2021-78, council recommendation report zoning bylaw amendment file D14 ZBA-04-21, Midland Bay Landing, and item 21.2 bylaw 2021-54, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2004-90 as amended respecting 420 Bayshore Drive, Midland Bay Landing. So that's the agenda with the removal of the bylaw and the zoning. So, any comments or questions with respect to the agenda? So, Councilor Gordon.
So I was just wondering if we were going to do what we, I think we're trying to traditionally do now, and that's move the public meeting section up to the beginning of the meetings, just so we're not having people wait while we postulate and do all the things we do on council.
I suspect that we'll be getting there virtually within minutes. So once we get through the consent, this motion, the consent agenda, and then it goes over to the deputy mayor. Deputy mayor, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's first thing on my agenda.
Are we okay with that? It's only a matter of minutes now. Okay. So all in favor of the agenda? Thank you. That carries.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes.
I believe you forgot to ask for declarations of conflict of interest for this
I guess
section
so.
of the agenda.
Absolutely, I did.
Okay.
Any conflicts with respect to the agenda items? Thank you. I see none. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So next we have moved by Councillor Pro, second by Councillor Main, that the items and related recommendations contained within the December 8th, 2021 consent agenda, pardon me, as consent items having been considered by council, be adopted with the exception of item 10.4.3 CSR-2021-80 audited financial statements. Item 10.4.5 CSR-2021-82 delay 2022 community grant application process. Item 10.4.9 CSR-2021-86 alternative voting methods 2022 municipal and school board elections. Item 10.4.1.10 rather, CSR-2021-87 Town of Midland comments number 2 on Simcoe County Municipal Comprehensive Review and Draft Lands Needs Assessment, which will be considered under Section 10. Reports and other items withdrawn from consent agenda for council's consideration. So that is the consent agenda. Comments, questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make a quick comment with regards to the downtown mural conditions report. I wanted to thank staff for having that put in there. I know it looks like we're going to be reaching out for grants, and I love that opportunity. And I believe that the murals are a great part of this town that make us unique. And it would be nice to get some funding from the provincial or federal government to fix, maintain them and improve on them. So thank you so much. And a couple of other things with regards to Huronia Museum line of credit of 2022. That's something we've done every year, and it's just sort of to keep their operating going. So everything else looks great, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gordon.
Just echoing what the deputy mayor said about the murals, I wanted to speak to that briefly. That is a great initiative. One of my biggest concerns is, as they start to deteriorate or as buildings change hands, what compels the owner to keep them? What if he or she don't have any particular fondness for this mural, want to paint an advertising for their business over that? What protections can we put in place voluntarily, clearly, to preserve these and restore them? So I think this is a great first step. I didn't see anything in there about the fact that it's on private property. The town doesn't own it, what kind of plans we can have, but I'm sure that'll flesh out as part of this. And I think everyone that enjoys the historic murals that we have that Mr. Lenz and his family have built and maintained really would like to see them restored to their original beauty, and perhaps even the addition of some new ones. And
thank you.
That's more of an attraction. So nice to see that.
Thank you. Mr. Deneau and I made it very clear to the minister our Associate Minister of Tourism, that they are important to Midland, also the Minister of Infrastructure. So it's in front of them, and I know that Ms. Mealing will put together a good proposal. I'd also just say that in the report from Ms. Mealing, there was some conversation around the relationship between the municipality and the private landowner, and it remains unclear as to what the responsibilities might have been, since some of this stuff goes back to '67, but quite well taken. Councillor May.
That was the only other item that I was going to mention about the murals. And the only comment that I was going to say is, unfortunately, we have lost a few of them. The town and the BIA with the facade improvement has been able to kind of touch up a few of them. Some facade improvements have actually gone towards painting over some of them, unfortunate as it is. And the one comment is, I know Karen Mealing loves alu panels and mounting them on if you can't paint on the building structure. But I thought if we're going to be going into the depths to do some feasibility on refurbishing murals or even painting new ones, there has to be some sort of a building brick specialist or a paint on brick specialist out there that we could tap into, because that's one of been the biggest issue is peeling and even some damage to the bricks. So that's a very important question that we have to kind of answer is which ones are damaging the buildings, which are fine, and how do we protect them so that these pieces of art last as long as they do, or last longer than we hope that they would. So it's just a general comment for Ms. Mealing. So again, thanks for all her hard work, and her presence at the BIA meeting when she talked about this was greatly appreciated. The BIA does love their murals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions before I call the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. And we now have a motion to move into committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Downer, seconded by Councillor Olszewski, that council resolve into the committee of the whole. All those in favor? Thank you. Over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Welcome to committee of the whole. Tonight we have no presentations, but we do have a public meeting. So we'll move straight into the public meeting. I would like to call this public meeting in order. This public meeting is being held to receive input from the public on the proposed bylaw related to rules of the procedure for council and its committees. This public meeting is being held in accordance with section 16 of the town's notice bylaw 2009-20 and the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, section 238-2. The purpose of this meeting is to hear from the residents and to seek clarity of their comments. Council is not making a decision or taking a position tonight. Staff will report back in the future with a recommendation report. This is your opportunity to speak, and council encourages you to do so. I would like to ask the clerk to confirm notification of the meeting regarding the proposed new procedure bylaw. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ross. Notice of the public meeting was posted on the town's website, social media accounts, and was included in the town pages of the Midland Mirror on December 2nd, 2021. Accordingly, all notice requirements have been met.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I'll now open the meeting to comments from the public. Anyone wishing to comment may call the Deputy Clerk at 705-526-4275, extension 2212. The number is also being displayed by Rogers Television for those watching and wish to call in. Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have any people here right now, or Madam Clerk, that would like to comment?
We have Donna Gordon.
Wonderful. Ms. Gordon, I will turn it over to you. I'll ask you to state your name and your address for the record, and please come forward with any question.
Hello, my name is Donna Gordon. I'm a resident of Midland. I reside at 1031 Dominion Avenue, and I am a business owner in the downtown core of Midland. I have questions related to Chapter 9, Council Meeting Order of Proceedings, the Agenda and Minutes, specifically Section 911. That refers to the subject matter involves litigation. And my question is, anything that could become a subject of litigation for any reason whatsoever, why would council not want to attempt to settle matters outside of legal venues and save costs or make any attempts to avert conflict and cost to the ratepayers? It's almost like an ounce of prevention is far more, it's greater than a pound of cure. Like, why are we looking to litigate? So why are we trying to insulate ourselves from conflict resolution before it goes to subject litigation? That was my first one. The next one was 911T. Persons seek to have prior decisions of council reconsidered. This shouldn't be summarily dismissed. People who are unhappy with decisions should always be able to approach their government, their local government, and speak to issues and look for answers. So I'm not sure why we're not allowing the public to look for closure, or perhaps, council would not reconsider. And then the next one I have a question on is 911V. Not being able to speak to personal business promotion or derogatory nature relating to municipal office or personnel in the employ of the town. So what if the petition was about levels of service, like for instance, lack of snow plowing? Would that be denied? And because if there's like a misinterpretation, would that be implied as some kind of criticism of an employee or an operator? And so I'm just wondering if it impacts service delivery, are we not allowed to question or ask anything? And so the last question I have is, we're no longer recording any committees, anything like that. And so in the grips of the pandemic, right, how is the access, and I know this is not part of this, but how is the public supposed to access these meetings or attend these meetings? And should this be addressed in this policy? So that's everything that I wanted to comment on. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gordon. Are we just taking these comments for information, or is there a response that we're at this point? Or we're just waiting for the report? I'm not sure.
We are compiling the comments.
Oh,
Sorry,
wonderful.
through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, wonderful.
However, when it came to the last comment about recordings of committees,
Yes,
staff is going to be looking, and administration is going to be looking at the terms of reference for each of the committees, and we'll be reviewing that in 2022.
wonderful.
About whether or not they will be recorded or not. And also, I missed the first section of your question. You said 911 T and V, and then I wasn't, I missed the first one. I'm sorry.
Ms. Gordon, what was the first comment you had?
It was about legal,
R,
right?
yes.
R,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate any other comments?
That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you calling in this evening. Anybody else, Madam Clerk, that would like to comment with regards to this procedure bylaw?
No, there are no other people wishing to comment.
No other at this point?
No, no phone calls.
Okay. Since there is no further comments, I will call this meeting to an end, this public meeting to an end. Thank you very much. Appreciate Ms. Gordon calling in, and we'll look forward to that report coming to council at a future date. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
There must be another opportunity for people to continually provide update. There must be an email or engaging Midland that they can touch base if they have comments or questions.
Madam Clerk. Thank you, Councillor Main.
Thank you, Councillor Main, through the chair. We have provided a notice on the website, social media sites, and we're asking that all comments be received by December 17th. So they can email clerks@midland.ca to provide their comments. And I believe the draft of the bylaw has been on the website for over a month, as well as the notice. The notice was in the town pages as of December 2nd. That was just the timing. Yeah, December 2nd. So they can, anyone can send in their comments. And what we're doing is we're preparing a document that will be circulated to council. And I'm going to be preparing a staff report with the final bylaw to be presented January 19th. And all of the comments with our answers, the staff comments, will be circulated and attached to that staff report in January. And that at that point, there'll be further discussion.
You're on mute, Deputy Mayor.
My apologies. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And we'll move on now to deputations. And we have one deputation from Mr. I apologize, I'd hate to pronounce your name wrong. Paul, it is. Are you with us?
Hi, it's Paul Stoichevsky. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to remind you that you have 10 minutes with regards to retention of the forest along Bayshore Drive, Midland Bay Landing Site. You'll have 10 minutes for your presentation. If you'd like, I can remind you when there's 2 minutes remaining, and please stick around. We may have a couple of questions after your presentation. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, did you know that when a tree is cut down, the other trees around it extend their roots to its own to give it life for a few more days? So trees seem to value life more than we do. Today, everyone in Canada is talking about climate change and what they can do about it. The first thing that comes to mind for most Canadians when considering what they can personally do about it is planting more trees. So why then is Midland Town Council planning to go in the opposite direction and tear down the last forest standing by the Bayshore? This is going to cause an environmental disaster. Trees are needed to prevent flooding. We have seen the water levels rise in this town already. The forest is the last green space along the shores of Midland. It's the last free green space by the shore where all Midlanders can go and enjoy a walk in the forest. So that forest is quite unique to Midland and to the surrounding areas. Within it, one can find herbs, the tallest white birch trees around, wildflowers, and a variety of trees that the wildlife, such as blue jays, cardinals, orioles, squirrels, chipmunks, and beavers use. And since the forest is beaver habitat, we know it's a federal offense to destroy it. Of course, people use the forest as well to walk through as an alternative to constantly walking on concrete sidewalks, to walk their dogs in, to just absorb its serenity and beauty. For some residents of Midland, this last green space by the Bayshore also has sentimental value. So after the love of my life, Dominique, died at the beginning of 2016, I dealt with my own grief by walking through that very same forest. It was where we walked together with her dog, and I still walk through it when I can and talk with her to this day. So you'll be taking away that from me as well. Coincidentally, tomorrow would have been Dominique's 42nd birthday. She would have joined me today to talk about what was important to both of us. When this forest is gone, tourists and residents will wonder where in Midland they can go to walk in nature. It is an especially important forest to all except to Midland Town Council, it seems at least. I understand that this, our last shoreline forest, probably does not look like much to the current Midland Town Council, since it seems that financial matters of the town are more important to you. But the rest of us, for the rest of us, it is incredibly beautiful and meaningful. So please take a look at photo 1 that I've given you. Photo number 1 in that forest, of the forest, sorry. So here is how it looks to me. This photo I took back in 2018. I'm a filmmaker and photographer, so you might say that I'm able to capture the colors and beauty that others don't see. Midlanders tell me that when they were promised over and over by town councillors that nothing would ever happen to that Bayshore forest. But it's obvious now that we have all been lied to for years. Across the street from this forest is the Chigmuk Community Health Center, which provides Indigenous traditional healing services. And the traditional Indigenous healers believe that sickness begins in spirit, that impacts one's mind, emotions, and body. Ironically, the spirit of Midland Town Council is all about tearing down nature for property tax. It is a spit in the face of all of Canada's Indigenous people who have always considered themselves the keepers of this great land of ours. Many people are so imprisoned in their minds that the beauty of nature does not exist for them because our minds are always thinking about profit. No civilization in history has ever produced such ugliness. Unlike other Canadian towns I've ever visited, in Midland, there's a for sale sign on every single remaining forest for some reason. I've seen your so-called master plan for Bayshore. It involves tearing down the forest and replacing it with ugly homes and businesses, all for the purpose of more property tax. The stores you plan to build will obviously take business away from already struggling businesses on King Street. In your master plan, which is really a master of disaster, the tall lamps at your proposed port area look like they belong in a concentration camp. Please look at photo 2. In photo 2, this is my beloved Dominique. You can see that she is standing in front of a tree that was recently bulldozed over by your insensitive construction crew in what is now your port area. That tree and the greenery you see behind it no longer exist. You can see just from a glimpse in this photo just how beautiful, just how much beauty was destroyed already. That tree protected my father from wind and sun when he was fishing. Now, instead of fishing all day, he can only stay for a couple of hours because of the lack of protection. There's also a plan by town council to change the parking lot at the parkette that lies adjacent to where that tree once stood and make it more difficult for seniors to enjoy nature. At the moment, seniors can just drive their cars up to the edge of the parking lot, and it is only a few steps away for them to walk up to the edge of the parkette and be next to water, or they can walk a few steps and sit on the benches and enjoy the view. With your new plan, they will have to walk a greater distance just to be able to enjoy it. And some seniors have great difficulty walking, and Midland has a lot of seniors. Your master plan also calls for a new bicycle path that runs right through the forest. This is unnecessary because there is already a bicycle path in the same vicinity that runs along Bayshore Drive, and no one has complained about it. The plan is based on the idea that tourists will get off their boats and walk along the path towards the town center, but to get there, they will be passing by new homes, which will not be that appealing to look at, and the new homeowners will not like people constantly walking past their homes. Besides, what resident in Midland would trade their nature areas for concrete anyway? You are turning a beautiful small town into another Barrie with the expansion and bad planning it is known for. Nobody really wants to live in Barrie. Every time I walk by or drive by the new construction area at the foot of Bayshore where the port is being built, I dread to see the new destruction that the construction crew has done. Just like every time I drive by the Walmart, I'm disgusted to see the dog houses that are being built there, all looking exactly the same. There are other places to build in Midland, areas that are abandoned and already made of concrete, where there's already been no green space for years, such as forgotten roads. Why don't you build those ugly dog houses there instead and leave the last shoreline forest for residents of Midland to enjoy? The type of expensive housing you are planning is not going to benefit the people of Midland. Affordable housing is what is needed instead. It is obvious now that part of town council's overall plan for the future of Midland is to get rid of the landscape that surrounds Little Lake as well, which is now a row of beautiful trees that give us oxygen, beauty, and serenity. Already the tree line is gone where you built the dog houses beside the Walmart. Once residents there start to maintain their houses and cars, the chemicals they use will seep down into Little Lake and destroy the existing wildlife. Nature lovers like myself will no longer go to Little Lake after the tree line is gone because we don't want to stare at houses and apartments when we go for a rejuvenating walk. The town councils that came before you knew that the people of Midland needed a place where everyone could go for recreation. So they created Little Lake to be a place of tranquility. They also reserved a parkette at Bayshore because they knew that seniors would need a place to stop and enjoy the view. Those
2
former
minutes, sir. 2 minutes remain, sir.
Those former town councilors were aware that when we were kids, there were many more birds around because there were more trees. With each coming year, we leave less and less nature for future generations to enjoy. It would appear that today's town council can only see dollar signs, so you'll eventually cut down all the trees surrounding Little Lake, creating a view of the lake even the new future residents will not like because it would have lost all its splendor. I suggest that you stop now and build a splendid garden at the Bay Shore, at least. Please look at photos 3 to 7. That will match the vision of beauty that the founders of this town had in mind. The photos that you see are from Vancouver Island, showing the possibilities that would warm the hearts of Midlanders and tourists. If we had a garden at Bay Shore instead of concrete, your job should be, I think, to preserve what we have and not create another Barrie. That small town feel is much more important than expansion to those who live in Midland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions or comments with regards to the presentation? I'll go to Councillor Gordon and then Councillor Main.
First off, thank you for your presentation. My condolences on both the loss of Dominique and the tree that represents clearly so many warm memories for you. A bit ironically, the new procedures we're asked to being adopt would likely preclude a presentation like this tonight, because you clearly have some anger and contempt for this council and previous council's decisions and actions. And I'm not suggesting that's undeserved. I do support your right to speak to us as you are, with respect, but with clear pain and displeasure. Knowing that it's in a slow but steady steam ahead right now, as you see from what's going on at Midland Bay Landing, I'll remind you that, you know, next October, you and other voters in Midland get to form a new council, and they can either continue with our current trajectory or perhaps reconsider it. But given that this is still our term and we still have a year left to go, what would you like this council to do in regards to the Midland Bay Landing site and the current master plan? But effectively, what's your ask, sir?
Well, the area where the port is right now, the area that has been paved over, that area should be the garden, which you can see from the pictures I've shown you, that's what I'd like it to look like. Leave the rest of the forest. We need a natural forest to walk in. I mean, right now, the trees are disappearing in Midland. You know, what do we have left? We have Tiffin Park and we have the Bay Shore Forest. But Tiffin Park, if you walk through it like I do, it's noisy now because of all the construction going on, all the houses being built. The Bay Shore Forest is the quietest forest you can walk through right now. I just want to leave it alone for the peace and serenity it gives. Just build a nice, serene garden. The pictures I've shown you are of Japanese style, so just hire some Japanese garden designer, maybe somebody who's designed the ones in Vancouver Island. Just get one of those guys, and it'll be beautiful. It'll be something we can leave to future generations.
Councillor Main, you had a question?
I was just gotta commend Mr. Stoychevsky over his great presentation, because he's absolutely right on several fronts. Is that our urban canopy in Midland there's lots of holes in it, and the onus is on town council to try to plant as many trees as we can in the public realm and in public properties. So absolutely, I totally agree on the deputant on that matter. We're looking at urban tree management. That's a very common tool that other places are looking at. And so we analyze which trees are healthy, if there's a good diverse mix, if there's too many invasive species. And the only question I had for you, Paul, was about the challenge of Bay Shore and the greenery there, and it's on top of a brown field. And you're talking about trying to prevent pollution, air, water, right? Trees give us great air quality, but pollution in the ground is also a concern. So I just wanted to, how does that play into this discussion that we have basically some greenery on top of a brownfield? Thank you.
When you say brownfield, are you talking about toxins? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I don't believe that's true at all. I believe that I believe that's something that's made up by the people who want to demolish it. And they want to tell us that nothing grows there and nothing will grow there because of that. But everything is growing there right now. So it's not affecting the trees, the flowers, the herbs, the animals there. It's only affecting us, it seems. We talk about it, but I don't think it's happening.
Councillor McGinn, you had a question?
Yes, thank you very much. So Monsieur, I would like to ask if, I understand that you're originally from Mississauga, and for a while I was in Oakville, and my former husband was in Mississauga. And So my question is contingent on whether you know about the rehabilitation and the expansion of the Rattray Marsh in Mississauga, and then the network that connects Mississauga and Oakville. So I don't want to ask you questions that you don't have
I
personally.
think we may be getting a little off subject. This is to do
Oh,
with
no,
the-
I will not be off topic if he knows it.
Well, it's to do with the Midland Bay.
All I know
land-
about it.
Yes,
all
it
I-
is. It's based on his history and his historical knowledge, and then I'll reference it back to some of the contaminants and some of the projects that were done previously in other locations, and therefore we have precedence and we have reference. That is why I am asking these questions, because I don't want to waste the deputant's time.
Well, all I've heard about it is that another highway's plan to go through it and people are against that. So Highway 413, I believe it's called. So that's all I know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to make sure that I didn't ask you questions that could not be viewed as pertinent to the discussion at hand and specific to Midland.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. I see no more
welcome.
questions, so I'll bring this deputation to an end. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this evening.
Thanks,
And,
Mike. Nice
we'll-
jacket. Nice jacket.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And Merry Christmas, and my condolences to you and your family. I'm sorry to hear of your loss, and I wish you nothing but a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next up on the agenda this evening, we have reports and other items withdrawn from the consent agenda. And first up, we have the CSR 2021-80 audited financial statements. That report, CSR 2021-80, 2020 audited financial statements dated December 8, 2021 be received, and that council receives from the audit committee the draft 2020 audited financial statements and approves same as being the 2020 audited financial statements for the town of Midland. I need a mover and a seconder with regards to this item. Moved by Councillor McGinn, second by Councillor Olszewski. And I pulled this item, and I just wanted to get an update with regards to the financial statements from Mr. Jeremy. Mr. Jeremy?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor Ross. So the town's audited financial statements is at December 31st, 2020. Once again, we have received another clean audit opinion from BDO. They have noted in their audit report that through their audit planning, they identified their areas of risk, which would be the typical things like risk of management override, revenue recognition, legal exposures, that sort of thing. And I'm happy to report that in their audit report, they'd indicated that there were no material misstatements identified in those areas. They also identified that there were no material deficiencies in the town's internal controls and no items that were noted for other required communications to the audit committee. So that's the report from the auditors in a nutshell. With regard to the financial results themselves, for the PSAB accounting purposes, we're looking at a $7.9 million surplus in 2020. One of the big items that will have changed year over year is the $12 million King Street debenture that we issued, and the associated asset acquisitions that went along with that. That was part of our total TCA acquisitions of about $17.5 million. Naturally, we had COVID impacting some of our operating revenue, but we also had some offsetting grant revenue from the province and the federal government for Safe Restart.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy. Great news and great report. Thank you so much. Councillor Gordon, you had a question?
Yeah, just more of a follow-up. Initially, when the first draft of this thing came out, it to the uneducated, it read kind of like that we had all kinds of potentials for fraud because there were some statements missing from what I learned is boilerplate language in these things. And the statements that were missing are now in the new draft, what I think is being circulated, which has language like, after the management override of internal controls, and it talked about, it's in red, all these risks that were noted, that management's in a unique position to perpetrate fraud. Like, this is not what you want to read on the audit committee or from a public lens. And what was missing was just a statement that they've now added that says we completed our audit procedures that did not find any material misstatements that the committee should be aware of. Simple little things like this that a lot of people, I guess, don't need to read, to infer. It's nice to see those, and they put those in a few spots after the audit committee got together, and I guess I was the only one concerned about it. So I did get a revised draft, or maybe it's the final version, that has language like that and other comforting language like, based on our audit procedures, we did not find any material deficiencies, but that the internal controls matters. Like, this is just nice summary concluding wrap-up statements that weren't in there before, and they are now. So for those of us who read these things and maybe don't look at them every day, this is comforting language. And to anyone that was overly concerned that perhaps there was some malfeasance at the town of Midland, I'm happy to concur with the auditors that, of course, I believe the auditors, BDO guys, that life is good and all is well. So, nothing to see here.
Mr. Jeremy, care to follow up?
Yes. So the colors, the red, that's simply the corporate branding for BDO, and I thought that we had addressed that one. The other aspect of it is, yes, the original language in the BDO's audit report is the standard language that they would use in audit reports like this, and as expressed by other members of the audit committee, it's something that they're accustomed to seeing as their background is in public accounting. These additional statements were added to at the request of some of the members of the audit committee. So they were, our auditors were just trying to be helpful on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you.
Your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm going to take exception to a bit of this. 3 hours prior to the audit committee meeting, Councillor Gordon posted that he had concerns about internal control mechanisms and fraud, and basically put it out to the public that he was going to monitor this very closely, rather than picking up the phone and phoning the CFO for clarification, rather than phoning the chair of the audit committee and finding out for clarification what all this was. I interrupted my day and went and had a look at it, and I'm not a CFO, I'm not a CPA. All I did was read it, and I read the red headline and went, oh. And then I read right below it and it said, no material concerns, on each of the headers that the councillor brought up to the public, as though there was something untoward going on. To the point where the CAO spent the better part of a day pulling the CFO and the person who worked their tails off to get this thing done correctly in the midst of everything else with new auditors. It took the better part of a day to pull them off the ceiling and settle them down. And I know that the chair of the audit committee wrote a letter to the finance team saying that they'd done it under the circumstances in which they operated. They did a marvelous job in terms of, despite the adversity of COVID, new auditors and other things that were impacting in a negative way, did a wonderful job. And I just like to publicly acknowledge the CFO and his team for doing that. And I'd like to suggest that perhaps you don't have to be a rocket scientist to read this stuff. You just have to read it instead of putting it out to your public that that these untoward things were going on. You might want to actually apologize to the CFO team, but that's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Gordon?
Certainly. Well, I mean, I'm no stranger to apologies on these little Zoom sessions here. Matter of fact, I'm surprised there isn't a section in our agenda for me to do so. But in this particular case, I was responding to things that were published online about and concerns. Wasn't the first to publish this. I was responding to things that were brought to my attention. And as a member of the committee, I committed. You look at the timestamp, shake your head all you want. Go look when the stuff was published. But at any rate, if you want to get into that, we can do that. But the bottom line is, when people bring concerns to me, I'm no stranger to swimming upstream and flagging those concerns and committing to getting answers. And what's most important is I follow through on everything I say. And I did ask at the meeting, and we did get answers. And thankfully, I was able to get the consensus of the committee to record the thing so the public can watch it, assuming it's going on YouTube. and they can hear the whole conversation. So there's nothing untoward about it. There was concerns expressed by the public, the people we serve, who put us here. I shared them because I read it. It was pretty plain to me that there was no conclusions. The things we were talking about did not have conclusion statements.
All right,
They
we're
do
not
now.
going to go back and forth. I gotta
Well, you
stop
know
this
what? The mayor
conversation.
doesn't just get to throw stuff at me and then have the
Pardon
last
me,
word.
I'm going to stop this conversation. And you guys can take it up offline. I'm going to leave. We have a motion on the floor just to approve the financial statements. I'm not going to get into the weeds and back and forth. All those in favor of the financial statements receiving, all those in favor? Opposed? I see none. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy. Greatly appreciated. Next up, we have item pulled is CSR 2021-82, delayed 2022 community grant application process. That staff report CSR 2021-82, delayed 2022 community grant application process dated December 8th, 2021 be received, and that the advertising for the availability of funds under the 2022 community grant program be delayed until council has completed a reevaluation of the program as part of the 2022 budget process. I need a mover and a seconder for this item. Moved by Councillor Downer, second by Councillor McGinn. Any questions or comments? John Main, Councillor Main, I believe you pulled this item. Councillor Main?
Yes, I did. Well, I was kind of super disappointed to see that we're considering not moving forward with the community grant program. We took a lot of effort to get this up and running, and we've had 2 successful years, I believe. And so I'm comfortable putting it forward as is for 2022. And I'll be brief. You can't have community development if you don't invest in the community. This amount is relatively small in terms of our municipal budget. It's low cost, but it's high impact. Every day, every week, every month, we see all the great stories of what the tiny little bit of funding from the community grant program is doing. Crimson King, we're having the cenotaph. There's people reaching out, researching errors and omissions. And, you know, this is from the community grant program. So I think it would not be wise for us to cancel the community grant program. We can maybe tweak the amount, but certainly let's advertise it so we can disperse the funds by the end of March, May, by the time everything is analyzed and reviewed. And I'll be a little cheeky here. If we don't pass this, I bet we will all be visited by 3 ghosts, with the first ghost coming after midnight. So anyways, I'll leave that as. Thank you.
No, I don't believe this is to cancel. I apologize if I'm misreading. It's the idea of the get to budget and allow the process of budget and come up with a balance of what we would. Is that correct, Mr. Jeremy? And then I'll go to Councillor Gordon.
Certainly. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ross and Councillor Main. I appreciate the sentiment on it. The reevaluation of the community grant program is an element in the 2022 budget that we have put forward. My suggestion would be take the time to read the service level change form that you will find in the budget document. You haven't seen it yet, so don't worry, you haven't missed reading that anywhere. This motion this evening is purely intended to just delay the announcement of the approved funding. And the reason that we're suggesting doing that this evening is with council's reevaluation of that program, you may make a decision different from what has typically been the case for that program. And what we didn't want to have happen is we go through the process of announcing this, as would be required under the terms of that particular program, having some community groups go and do the work to put together their applications, to then find out that through the budget process, all other priorities of the organization being considered, some modification has been made that affects what it is that they would have been applying for. So that's all we're looking at tonight, is just delay that announcement, let the evaluation run its course. If council decides that, hey, we want to continue with the program as is, then so be it. We would keep the same timelines. It still leaves a couple months for folks to get their applications together, and given the size of the applications, it's not an unreasonable amount, and have the same sort of timelines as they would otherwise.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, sorry, thanks. I appreciate the, the fact that we're looking into this. Last year, I think it was, and even I chair that committee. The suggestion I believe I brought forward was that we put a pause on it because we, in my quest to try and get us to a 0% tax increase. Now, I have no fantasy that that's going to happen this year in the slightest. And my concern is that I really think we're going to have to take a hard look at the grants and everything to try and keep the rate down. We look at our peers around us, just shy of 4%, 3% tax increases. And, this is not going to be, I keep telling people this is not going to be a pretty budget. I'm not looking forward to it, but part of me is, but there's going to be some hard decisions made. And I think I'd be willing to see this community grant, paused for a year while we try and find savings elsewhere. But the rub is going to be, we better find savings elsewhere. It can't just be sacrificing community grants and we just keep spending like it's not a pandemic. If we can balance that and still keep community grants, I'm good for it. But I am looking forward to the recommendations from Mr. Jeremy, who I find very competent and very clear and concise, just to be clear here, and very, just an honest stand-up guy that makes simple explanations out of complex subject matter. So I am looking forward to reading what those recommendations are. I'm leaning towards just telling everyone right now, it's pausing this community grant program. I know it's not a huge material amount of money, but every bit counts. But I'm only going to do that in combination with other cuts we find other places, because it's not fair to throw our small community seed money under the bus, if we're just going to keep living large or large-ish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gordon. Any other questions or comments with regards to this item? Councilor Main, final word.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the thing is I'm comfortable supporting it as is, but you got me a bit of a quandary because the grant program does need a little bit of review every year. And so, I want to support it as is, and I don't want to have to go through the process of reviewing it because it's such a small amount, but it has such a high impact. And the only caution I would put out there for community and staff is other communities that have gone away with community grant programs and they've said, oh, the community will just pick up the slacks in charity and whatever. The charities are there and they're there to donate, but it never adds up to the amount that the municipality can put towards it. I believe it might be Clearview or Blue Mountains that there's example the last couple of years where they got rid of their grant program to donation based, and it just fizzled out. And so that's the worry, because I think that we have this great program here and I really kind of like it. But if we want to fine tune it, I'll be supportive of that. And I'm definitely going to be supportive of the community grant program as is. Thank you.
Now, thank you very much, Councilor Mayor. And not that I want to get back and forth, but there could be an argument that's exactly why we do this. You just answered that exact question. CRO Deneau.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And again, I just want to reinforce what our CFO has said. Obviously, this is a pause while we go through the budget consideration. And I'd certainly encourage everyone as you look at the draft budget and what's up for consideration, we've taken a look at the community support that is provided in our base budget, aside from the community grant program. And I think you'll find it quite interesting, the extensive level of support that we do provide to the community on top of the services that we provide. And again, in the interest of transparency and ensuring we are making good decisions with our taxpayers' money, we wanted to make sure people were aware of that. So you'll find within the budget document quite an extensive list of community support that is provided in the base budget, in addition to the community support program. Hence, the request, let's pause on this. That's not to say we're going to do anything, but it does deserve consideration through the budget process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deneau. I'll call the vote. All those in favor, move this forward. Opposed, if any? That's so carried. Thank you both so much. Next up, we have a report, CSR 2021-86 dated December 8th, 2021. Alternative voting methods, 2022 municipal and school board election be received, and one, that council authorized the use of internet telephone voting as a voting method to be used in the 2022 municipal and school board election and subsequent elections. And two, that pursuant to section 42-1-B of the Municipal Act 1996, council direct the clerk to bring forward a bylaw to authorize internet telephone voting. I need a mover and a seconder with regards to this item. Moved by your worship, second by Councillor Olszewski. Any questions or comments with regards to this item? Councillor Main?
Thank you. Yeah, this was a great report. Thank you, Sherry. Thanks so much. And Laura Lee, good to see you. Hey, Laura
Hi,
Lee.
Laura Lee.
Welcome.
Welcome to the meeting. Great to see you back.
She's like the pinch hitter you bring into
That's
the
right.
home run.
Anyone who is not sure, Miss Lee was acting clerk for the corporation of the town of Midland for what was it, a year and a half, I believe, Miss Lee? And I appreciate you joining us and helping us out with this. Unfortunately, you are on mute, but thank you so much for your help. And we look forward to maybe we have a few questions for you. Councillor Main.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What I was going to suggest, the great report, and I think this is really important because it's not just the municipal election that it affects, it's actually the school board trustee. And we really got to do everything and anything we can to increase voter turnout. Midland and other municipalities sometimes are lower than 40%. A lot of it's people don't even know that they're eligible to vote. Some people who rent don't know that they can vote. Some people who own property don't realize they can vote. So we obviously just generally we have to do a good job. So the hope was that we could look at multiple methods of voting, so it's not just one only. So I think the recommendation is internet and telephone. And so I was just curious about what other municipalities in Simcoe did it. And Sherry, I asked a couple questions and Miss Edgar put a great email response back to all of us. And so one of the options that I would really like just for accessibility and age friendliness would be there's one option where you have internet and telephone with in-person ballots on request. And that adds another, 10, maybe 15, almost 20,000 to an 80,000 cost for the election. But I think it's worth maybe coupling one or two voting methods. We don't need all of the voting methods, but those multiple might be helpful or appreciated in the community. So that's why I just was curious about what are the other municipalities doing, and I just want to come up with an option and solution that's a commonplace across the board. So we're not doing something in Midland where other places aren't doing it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Madam Clerk or Miss Lee, you care to answer? Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Main. In our research, we were in touch with many clerks in all of Ontario, actually, not just Simcoe County. And we discussed the idea of having multiple voting methods. And most of them have said that logistically, it was a bit of a struggle in that if you had internet, telephone, and then a vote by mail, it was really hard to keep track of if people had voted once or twice. So internet and telephone is typically, although it's two services, it's sold as one. So to have an additional, like if you went with tabulators and the ballots again, you're essentially running two elections. It may not be double the cost, but it will increase the cost. It's a logistics nightmare for a lot. That's what some of the clerks have mentioned who have done, the extra, like a second type of alternative voting. And Laura, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit for this.
Miss Lee?
Oh, we can't hear you, Laura. It might be that little button on your cord.
Looks like we're having a bit of technical difficulty. Miss Lee? No, you're not there, unfortunately. Maybe next time we'll have to, if Miss Lee, unfortunately, we're having some difficulty. I apologize. No problem. Thank you. Councillor Main, maybe you could follow up with an email. Oh, next up, we have Councillor Gordon, then then your worship.
Perhaps Miss Lee could try removing her headphones and then her software will default back to her computer. Sometimes it's weird. You have to, like, I don't just mean removing them. I mean unplugging them.
Unplug your headset.
Yeah, sorry.
It may help.
Yeah, Zoom, sometimes you have to choose the input and output.
Do you want to try?
And then try unmuting.
Miss Lee? the fun of the Zoom meetings, isn't this?
I do have some questions, but I'd rather just see her get online and be able to answer this.
Everything went, everything froze for me. Sorry if I'm inappropriately interrupting, but you're
Nope,
all
You're
frozen.
good. You're good.
Back now.
Yeah, Miss Lee, are you able to unmute and see if you? Nope, that still muted. Unfortunately. That's all right. It's sometimes technology. We're not going to get an answer this evening, but please feel free to email Madam Clerk our question. But Councilor Gordon, if you do have a question, we'll do our best to answer. Please.
Okay, so I mean, needless to say, the internet and politics are a mix that I embrace, and I would argue that they're largely responsible for me being here. Also caught me in a little bit of trouble too, but I'm just thinking, I think Penetanguishene had some grief with their electronic system last term where they couldn't announce the results for at least a couple of days after, you know, the rest of us knew. And I get that in 4 years' time, there's been a lot of maturing on the application and platforms. So, you know, it's hard to judge the outcomes based on 4 years ago's technology. But that being said, we don't have awards anymore, neither does Pentang. But let's say that there's, you know, for the 9 X's you're going to check on your ballot virtually. If you were to do this on the phone, how does that work? Like, is it going to read off 45 names of people that are vying for each of these positions, and you have to stop it somehow and say, okay, I want this name? Like, I have never actually heard what it feels like to use from a user perspective for phone voting. Internet seems simple enough. It's going to be a web page and a whole bunch of names on it, and you put your X, decide your 9 that you want to make council, and press submit, and Bob's your uncle. But how does the phone one work? Is there any examples of that, or does anybody have any experience they could share? That's the part I'm struggling with.
Ms. Egger?
Spoken with the clerk in Penetanguishene because they've been using internet telephone, I believe, for at least the past 2 elections. And she said that most people will opt to use internet because you can vote through the internet on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop. However, through the phone, it's basically you dial in and it gives you all the options, and you press the button, and then at the end there's a certain button that you press that will send your selections through to the main site that will get calculated with the internet votes as well.
So it sounds like there's a bit more of a process, Councilor Gordon, but sorry, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, I was just going to say, actually, Dominion Voting has decided not to include telephone option with their internet voting. And the setbacks that you were talking about with the last election, it didn't have anything to do with security. It was simply a bandwidth issue with Dominion and their tabulators. So for whatever reason, they're not offering internet and telephone, and that could be a problem for them because most people like to have, if they go with the internet, they like to have the telephone option as well.
So we have some decisions to make and some answers to figure out. You got a follow-up, Councilor Gordon?
Yeah, so I much like Councilor Main, this is a very large change for our community, and we love to dole out change, and change is inevitable. However, it would be nice on this first iteration, even if it meant a little bit more cost. I know that runs counter to my let's keep our costs down argument. This is
Hello.
so fundamental. But
Sorry, that's Laura.
Laura, she's back.
Miss Lee.
She's been having some technical difficulties for the past couple of weeks, so I apologize.
All right, sorry.
Sorry. Then we'll refer back to Miss Lee if we have a question for her.
The suggestion of maybe spending a little more this first time as we roll out this program, kind of counters, my objective to keep our costs down. But this is such a fundamental, this is the core bit of democracy, is exercising your vote. And we not only have we changed the fact there's no awards, so now people will have the additional confusion of all these names, hopefully, on their ballot. But if we eliminate the paper option for the people who just feel that that's just overwhelming on the first time, I think it would be wise of us, in my opinion, to embrace both and go for that little bit of extra expense to make sure people haven't voted twice, and just make it an offer for people to sort of call in or pre-register or whatever that is to get a paper ballot. So we don't have a free-for-all where we have to fully staff the rec center and have people lined up. It would be kind of by appointment. much the way we've learned to do with our getting our jobs. And just for this first one, so people can see that it's a lot easier, and that gives people some transition time. And it didn't look like it was horribly expensive, you know, not a ton of extra, not material amount of money to do both for this round. So I would be supportive of, let's take the ease in approach. Let's embrace the technology and the changes and the accessibility that comes with internet voting. But let's also make it available the old school way if somebody wants to go and scratch an X on their card and with the tabulator. That would be my first choice. If that didn't work with council, then clearly I'd be supporting the internet voting option.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gordon. I understand wanting to have the second option for the residents. However, it would be an additional probably $50,000 to run the tabulator and the ballots in at the same time as the internet and telephone. And then we're going to have double the costs for training. We'll have to have staff at the rec center, a polling station, meals. You know, we did a bit of a numbering thing, and for the internet telephone voting, if that's the way council would choose to go, it would be about $47,000, and the tabulators are about $80,000 to do.
Okay.
So it is a significant cost, and again, it is very onerous, and it is really difficult to try and keep track of who's voted online, who's voting in person.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yeah.
I'll move.
Thanks.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Gordon?
Just a quick one then. Much like what we've done with the parking meters, is there an ability to have this website up in advance where people can try and interact with it and go through a mock election with a bunch of, you know, nonsense names, just so they can learn how to use the system so that they have a chance to try it out before election day?
I'm seeing a shake of head, yes, but I'll allow Madam Clerk to answer.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gordon. We will be developing a communications plan, and we'll work with the vendor, whoever it is that we go with, and they will have, we will have open house sessions. I'm not sure about the actual hands-on training, but I know that there is some type of training involved. So we will do our best to just get the word out and get it out early so that people are aware that if they go with this new system, we're here to help. And we're also going to be setting up with the telephone and internet. We set up a help center within the council, like at the council chambers. So we only have to rely on municipal staff to staff it. And anybody who doesn't have a laptop or a phone or doesn't have connectivity, which that doesn't really happen a whole lot in Midland. We're pretty good for Wi-Fi and the internet connections. They can come to the council chambers, and 7 to 10 days prior to election day, and we'll have people there who can help them with, we'll have laptops set up, we'll have telephones set up, and you know, make it as easy a transition as possible. And also, as you all are aware, we do go to the nursing home and the retirement homes. So we will have, again, use municipal staff with a tablet or a laptop, and they will be able to, you know, do their voting with the laptop. And I mean, if they wanted to do the telephone, we will also have a telephone option. But if someone is there providing them with a laptop, I'm sure that's probably the easier way to just submit your vote. But so we will have a really good plan, and we'll make sure it's not just going to be September 1, you know, we're doing internet telephone. Well, we're definitely going to start getting the word out and getting people comfortable, and reach out to our vendor so that maybe they can provide some documentation as well. And I'm not sure if Laura may want to add some information.
Ms. Lee, you care to comment?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. My video won't work, but that's not
fine.
a problem.
No problem.
No, I don't have too much to add to what Sherry was saying. We certainly have put in the budget for communications. We have tried to work out scenarios for hybrid voting. A number of municipalities are doing hybrid. A number of municipalities are doing straight internet and telephone. Some are doing the traditional paper. So as soon as we get our marching orders from council this evening, then we will move forward. But we did need to know what flavor council wanted.
Wonderful. So next up, I have your worship, Councillor Cunningham. If anybody else has a question or comment, please hold your card up and I'll add you to the list. Sorry, Mayor Strathern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We've had several reports brought forward on this matter. And in each report, it's been recommended ultimately that the method of choice would be internet and telephone. In each instance, it's been punted down the field because, well, you know, it's fairly new. People won't be used to it. We don't understand all the issues. We've had, as we've heard, the last time we had issues with respect to having to wait a couple of days in some municipalities, Penetanguishene Machine comes to mind. It was basically because of bandwidth. I personally think it's about time that we make the leap to internet and telephone. I have great confidence in the clerk's department with the able assistance of Ms. Lee, to put together something that's going to make sure that people understand how to run the system. I mean, this isn't the United States in the presidential election. My fellow guy with we have some very competent people here. We've been running in other municipalities. Other municipalities have run very successful internet and telephone elections, and I personally will support the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Councillor Cunningham.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Clerk actually responded to my question quite clearly. From an age-friendly lens, civic participation is a pedal of age-friendliness that tends to suffer. And our seniors being able to have someone in person working with them on technology so that there's a successful vote that first time, having staff that they're actually coming in to vote, almost like the old-fashioned walk in and do your ballot, have a human being walk through. I think that solves very nicely the challenge and will be a great success. So I'm glad that that lens has been applied to this. I think we're going to see more and more times where we need to apply that age-friendly lens and say, have we considered all options? And it sounds like the clerks together have united and considered all those options to say, what can we do to make this work and not turn into a nightmare and still provide that customer service? So thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Main.
Thank you. Yeah, Dominion Voting Systems. Isn't that the company that was founded by Hugo Chavez? Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't joke. That's, but thank you so much for answering that, because voting in person via the internet is the same thing as a request ballot. So I apologize if that was in the report and I missed that, because that totally answers my questions and concerns. The fact that somebody could come in, or that there's even going to be outreach to reach out to the villas, that means that we basically will still have the opportunity for people to come in and be walked through it if they're very uncomfortable doing it at home, if they need the assistance. So that's great. That answers all of my questions and concerns. And so that price is all already included, all the bells and whistles. So that's great. So thank you so much for that. I apologize for taking us on a long, winded road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Main. And Councillor Main, if I could, I'd have a comment. I'll pass the chair to you, sir.
Certainly, Deputy Mayor. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to voice my support. Last time this came to council, I actually wanted to stay old school, but I thought it was important that was your right to go. That was your duty to go and vote in person. But COVID and the world and my kids and everything else has changed my ways, and so shows you can teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm going to support that. I think it's fantastic. I think I never thought that we could have a great meetings over a computer, but we've been able to, run our town and council for the last 20 months very easily over the computer. It's been great. We haven't really missed a beat. I'd love to be meeting in person. I always prefer the personal touch, but I will support this wholeheartedly. Thank you so much, Ms. Lee, for helping us out, the town of Midland, with this. And of course, Ms. Egger, appreciate it. I have more than every confidence that you'll do a great job. And last but not least, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote with regards to this item.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Gordon, do you want to comment?
Just a quick reiteration to make sure I understood this correctly, because needless to say, I'm getting conversations coming at me. I know we're not allowed to do that, but people do talk to me while I'm in council meetings. And the concern is from the seniors lens. So much as Councillor Cunningham is saying, I want to make sure I understood that for the seniors now, they would, get in a car with or carpool with somebody else, and they would go to the rec center, line up, herd of cattle like the rest of us, and put their X either at an advanced poll, I suppose, or on voting night. In this new arrangement, would we still have like computers set up at, for example, the sports and rec center or the library or town hall or several places? The town provided on a network with staff there to help, obviously not like press the button, you vote for this person, unless you want to vote for me, but helping people so they don't have to have technology, don't have to have a smartphone, they don't have to know how to use the internet. They just show up at one of these locations as they would to mark their X the old school way and use a town provided computers. Is what's being proposed on top of people being able to just do it from their, lazy boy at home?
Well, I'll let Clerk Edgar respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Gordon. Yes, we will be providing, it's not a polling station, it will be called a help center, and that will be located at in the council chambers. And I believe that we're allowed to, you could start voting 7 to 10 days prior to the election day. So we will have laptops, we will have telephones in case someone wanted to come in and they thought, well, I want to do it by telephone. And we will have, we'll rely mostly on municipal staff, which will be a huge cost saving as well. And we can walk them through it, and they'll be able to come in and vote just as they did if they wanted to go to a polling station, but it'll be a help center. So everything, it'll be, once you get there, you'll come out and you'll have voted and it'll be no problem. That's our plan.
Okay, so you could do a session at this Askononia, for example, or run a couple of sessions there in tandem with all the folks that, assuming we're not locked down again, go to the Askononia Senior Center, for example, just to make sure we're catching the people who are perhaps more techno challenged, shall we say.
For us to go there, like, this help center will be at the municipal office in the council chamber, so anybody can come. But we will have information sessions prior to, and maybe this will evolve as we start rolling out the training and just making people aware of the new system. Or maybe I'm not understanding your question correctly.
I think it was about that there's limited outreach that you do. There's some poll stations where you will go to long-term care facilities.
Yes.
But those are very few and far between.
But we did that even with the paper ballots and tabulators. We went to all of the retirement and nursing homes. They were allowed to vote. We worked with the administrators to get the voters lists for those residents who wish to vote. And then again, for the advanced and election day, we just had the one polling station at the rec center. So this time it will be an information center at the in the council chambers, and anybody who from 7 to 10 days prior to election day, there will be staff there to help them not guide them, but you know what I mean, to help them with their voting and make sure that it's done successfully.
That's
and
good.
again,
So
we will roll out
like the Midland bus or something. Could we do the bus? Could we put some computers on the bus and drive it around to different parts of the town, have the voting bus?
We would have to talk to Mr. Campbell about that. That's out of my bailiwick.
Faith in you guys. I'm good. You can call the question. I'm good. Right on. Thanks a lot for the clarity, Ms. Edgar.
Ms. Lee?
Mr. Chair, just to add to what Sherry was saying, yes, we would be having help centers at the nursing homes and the seniors institutions. So the other options that have been suggested, certainly we can think about. We hadn't gone beyond the town hall and the institutions at this point in our thoughts. But just one thing that could add to the conversation. We looked at a number of studies while we were putting this report together. And there is a report on online voting that was prepared by the Privy Council Office of the Federal Government with respect to federal voting. And I'm just quoting now, it says, a concern is that older electors are less inclined to vote online, since some of them may have lower levels of digital literacy than young people. Municipally in Canada, the average age of an online voter is 53 years. And those over 50 are the biggest users of the voting method. For comparison, the age of the average paper ballot voter in the same elections is 44 years of age. Age doesn't seem to make as much of a difference. Having reached the age where my grandchildren think that I am a senior citizen, you have people going around with their tablets and their smartphones and chatting with their grandkids. It's becoming less and less of an issue with the seniors. So it was just an interesting point that this is what they found in the study.
Well, thank you so much for that additional context. We have final comment from Deputy Mayor, and then we'll call a recorded vote.
Sorry, I just want to add to it. I know that if my, I hate to call it my mother, but she's a senior and she's adapted. And I think a lot of people have really adapted to the online banking, their online communication due to COVID. And this is a perfect opportunity. Everyone now seems to have a smartphone. I know it's a gift that, you know, we may even get to presents, and it's a, you know, everybody has a smartphone. And I was very surprised to hear that actually the average age is higher for online voting than it is for paper ballot. So to me, this is a perfect opportunity, and who knows where we'll be come October. I think we're being more than cautious. We're putting this in place that you can do it online, and to avoid that coming to you know, a mass spreader event at the rec center when everyone's there to vote. Who knows where we're going to be next October. I hope and pray that we're back to normal, but I thought we would be back to normal today. So by this Christmas, but it doesn't look like we are. So who knows what another 10 months will bring. So I'm surprising myself, but I think this is a great idea and I'm going to support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I was a little uncomfortable at the start of this conversation. I'm very comfortable now, considering that there's a help desk. That's great. And we'll move forward with that. So I think we have some consensus. We have no more comments and questions. So Madam Clerk, if you could call the recorded vote. Thank you.
Sure. Mayor Strathern, members of council, you've heard the question. When I call your name, please say yes or no. Councillor Olszewski?
Yes.
Councillor McGinn?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ross?
In favor.
Councillor Prost?
Yes.
Councillor Downer?
Yes.
Councillor Gordon?
Yes, ma'am.
Councillor Cunningham?
Yes.
Councillor Main?
Yes.
And Mayor Strathern?
Yes.
The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take over the chair, Councilor Main.
Oh, of
I
course.
know you, it's all yours. I
Please
can't take it
proceed.
from you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming for me. Thank you very much, Councilor Main. Next on the agenda, we have a staff report CSR-2021-87, Town of Midland comment number 2 on the Simcoe County Municipal Comprehensive Review and draft land needs assessment dated December 8th, 2021 be received, and that council endorse the comments contained within this report, CSR-2021-87, dated December 8th, 2021, as reflecting the position of the Town of Midland on the Simcoe County Municipal Comprehensive Review and draft land needs assessment to date, and that the comments be forwarded to the county. I need a mover and a seconder with regard to this item. Moved by Mayor Strathern, second by Councilor McGinn. Mayor Strathern, I believe you pulled this item. You had any comments?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You've all, I hope, read the report and will recognize in the report that Midland and most of North Simcoe appears to be coming up on the short end of the stick for growth allocation. In the initial pass, the consultants dealing with the MCR for the County of Simcoe, who's tasked with divvying up the growth allocation that was handed down from the province, has decided that 60% of the growth will go south of Barrie and 40% of the growth will go north of Barrie. So that basically is 80,000 persons between now, effectively, and 2051 will be distributed over all of North Simcoe. And when you start doing the math, you realize that Midland is looking at somewhere around between 4,000 and 5,000 people in that span. The report clearly shows that in the leading up to 2031, we had a growth allocation of 20,500. The new allocation going out to 2051 says 20,000 and 22,000 rather, and 600. So that's an additional 100 persons moving to the town of Midland between 2031 and 2051. It does make a lot of sense when you realize that about 3,000 rather homes are approved to move forward in the town of Midland, and that translates into an occupant. Given the last census, we're at 19,070 as of 2021, and so we're looking at a considerable shortfall being allocated to Midland just on approved residents. That growth, when you look at it, was 2.3 persons per resident on average. So when you consider 3,000 homes, we're at 6,600 people potentially moving to Midland. And as we've learned from some of the other conversations this evening, Midland is going to be, as are all the municipalities in North Simcoe, very much dependent on growth. When you consider that we're looking at 2% increase in cost of living in good times, and right now it's running at about 4.5. You start factoring that into the cost of municipalities, 2 municipalities over a 30-year period. It's not sustainable. Likewise, you'll have seen in the report that there are municipalities in North Simcoe, specifically Collingwood, where they've said they've got a growth of 20,000 allocated and they don't want it. So yeah, it begs the question. It begs the question, and when you consider that the majority of growth is going to occur in the Lake Simcoe watershed and the Nottawasaga watershed, both of which are at saturation with respect to biological loading, it makes no sense to put 120,000 additional homes into those 2 watersheds, and yet that's exactly what they're recommending that happens. So I strongly urge council to support this motion, and I will take a very active role in tomorrow's meeting at council. There's a workshop from 1 o'clock till 4 dealing with this matter, and I think that if the consultants aren't interested in listening, this will very quickly turn from a planning consideration to a political situation. Most of the mayors and deputy mayors in North Simcoe are really upset about what the consultants are proposing to do. They're upset with the county planners, and we're hoping that the county will listen to, because the county received what you see in this document in a form of a letter outlining our concerns. The county's response was, well, it's a minimum. It's you know, if it's don't worry about it. If you go over it, no problem. If that's true, why are we going through this process and paying all these consultants? I just don't get it. So I would really strongly urge you to support this motion and to engage with your MPP and whomever to get this changed. It just can't stand.
Thank you, Worship. Any questions or comments with regards to this item, Councilor Main?
Yeah, what Mayor Strathern was talking about the growth allocation from the province and the county, the planning, when we talked about planning, how sometimes there's no planning court, you know, these intensification targets, greenfield over intensification. What's the materiality of these numbers, the growth allocations? I'd love to hear from Mr. Farr on this, and as he popped up here, hello, because we might exceed, like what happens if we exceed our growth targets and we intensify and, you know, we build a lot more apartments that they say that we're going to build, because that's the one great housing type that we're missing. There's no recourse if we exceed our growth targets, would it? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councilor Main. The county's indicated that you can exceed these minimums within your defined developable areas. Where you start to run into issues is if you are confronted with an official plan amendment, for example, to lift a natural heritage designation and bring some lands into development. It's not clear to us what happens, what the county will do in the event that the town processes and supports something like that. And I can tell you that there are numerous applications that are pending, I guess, for official plan amendments in and around the town. We haven't formed opinions on those completely yet, but the municipality, the question is what autonomy does the municipality, what independence does the municipality have in deciding whether or not those lands come in or not. We have a list of questions for the county as well, because as council will know, there is this recently approved official plan in Midland. It came into effect this year as it happens. And that entire official plan is built on a land supply at the 2031 time horizon. And so if we, like on the employment side, the county is projecting actually 1,000 less jobs in 2051 than they're projected for 2031. We're concerned kind of about the foundational effect of radically changing the growth rate to a much lower growth rate. Do we end up, for example, with surpluses of employment land because the county says that there are no jobs here? It does really, on a day-to-day and practical level, kind of confound staff as we encounter developers who have strong intentions to invest in Midland and are seeking avenues to find a pathway to development approval. I'm not sure that's a reality. That's not a tabletop statistical exercise. So there's some practical questions, and those are outlined in the report. I do feel that that the county has a difficult job to do through this municipal comprehensive review and the land needs assessment. Those are provincially regulated exercises, and we've passed on a whole bunch of on-the-ground information from Midland that runs counter to their assumptions and expectations, and we've challenged them to try to come up with better numbers and answers to our questions. It goes to costs as well. You have to think that the town spent a considerable amount of money on its official plan. It was approved by the county. On the basis of that approval, the town went ahead and spent more money on water and wastewater master plans to grow this community on the basis of the expectations, but not just the expectations that we had, but what we're seeing on the ground. And this continued, I guess, push for investment to municipalities to Simcoe County does not look like it's going to stop. And in any case, this report sets out a bunch of those matters, and we're looking forward to, frankly, further discussion with the county to try to get some resolution on this and some clarity, so we can, so that Midland can chart its own path forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farr. Follow-up, Councilor Main?
Yeah, what a great response. Just on employment areas and employment lands, it was talking here in the report that there was some concern over potential conversion under this municipal comprehensive reserve review, that they could adjust our employment lands and employment areas at using their municipal comprehensive tool, kind of overriding it. Is that what's happening? I apologize.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair. There are some questions that are raised there because they're very practical questions about what happens when you alter the numbers. As I mentioned earlier, our official plan that we have in effect today was developed with very strict direction from the county as to what the town could and could not do. And on the basis of the projections that the mayor outlined earlier, the town established certain areas, certain physical pieces of land and areas where jobs are expected to be allocated in the future. The question for the county is, if those assumptions are no longer reliable, yet you have all of this land, and the province has a mechanism, and this is the employment land conversion mechanism, whereby people can make a case to switch their lands from job producing lands to residential. Will we see that? And if we do see that, what defense is mounted? And if it becomes a very interesting theoretical exercise, because let's say that these lands were converted and all of a sudden the residential slump, I guess, that the county is predicting didn't come to fruition. In fact, we continue to see this development activity. You would see disproportionate growth on the residential side and loss of job producing lands. Typically, when you get more population with it, a certain percentage creates local jobs. People that start as small businesses grow into businesses that need space of their own. They rent space out. This creates a demand, and you end up with a diversified local economy. You end up with a complete community where people live, work, they recreate and visit. The question is does that get thrown out of whack? And we need to know this. Like you need to know this, so that as we make decisions and we consider the implications of the questions that are asked of us by people that hold land, how does the town defend itself, and where does the county stand on that with respect to these projections? Because they're very real and serious issues. This goes to matters of day-to-day living and quality of life for families and businesses in Midland. And it also goes to tax rates and the financial stability of the municipality. Having diversification in different land uses means that those different land uses are taxed at different rates. And if you have an exceptionally high residential tax base, the residential taxpayer ends up carrying more of the freight. You would ideally have a better mix, so there's better balance and a kind of, I guess, overall, a kind of a fairer taxation level. So there are very real world implications and questions, and we're hoping to get more of this information from the county.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other questions or comments with regard to this item? I see none. I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on this item also. I'm hoping that we all support, so we send a strong and confident message to the county that Midland wholeheartedly supports this. Madam Clerk, if you call the vote. Over there, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button, my unmute button.
We've all done that. I gotta make a t-shirt.
I missed the question, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have a recorded vote on this item.
Oh, sure. Okay, Mayor Strathern, members of council, you've heard the question. When I call your name, please answer yes or no. Councillor Prost.
Yes.
Councillor Gordon.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ross.
In favor.
Councillor McGinn.
Yes.
Councillor Downer.
Yes.
Councillor Cunningham.
Yes.
Councillor Olszewski.
Yes.
Councillor Main.
Yes.
Mayor Strathern.
Yes.
And the motion is carried unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Council. Next on the agenda, we have a 2022 budget. And this is for information. I'm going to ask that we only ask questions after the presentation. Just for clarity, we have 3 big days of budget deliberations. And just in order to get through this meeting tonight. But I would encourage anyone who did have any questions or comments to please send them to Mr. Jeremy, and we'll look forward to those 3 days of budget deliberations. Mr. Jeremy, you have a presentation for tonight?
Deputy Mayor Ross, you certainly do. So I'm going to share my screen. And actually, I don't think that's the one I want to share. Okay, so you should see first page of the presentation in front of you. Can you confirm?
Yes, sir.
If it's titled Draft 2022 Budget for Council Consideration December 2021, yes.
That's the one. All right.
Wonderful. You're up, Mr. Jeremy.
Okay. All right, so the agenda for this evening's presentation is we'll start off with an introduction. We'll have a message from our CAO. We'll then talk a little bit about the council budget review process. That's what's coming up over the next number of months at this point. A little bit about how we've listened to our residents, some key budget directions, the tax funded operating budget, the user rate funded operating budget, our capital plan, and then we'll close out with next steps. So as mentioned, this evening's presentation is intended to provide members of council and the public with an overview of the draft 2022 budget. And you may have also noticed that you don't have a physical copy of the draft budget this year. That was that 400 or so page tome that you would have had in past years. For 2022, I'm happy to report that we've actually progressed to a paperless format for the draft budget. I think that you're going to find the e-binder is easier to navigate with embedded links through our index and the ability to search. This year's document is close to 480 pages, so that searchability and the ability to just click on the index, I think you're going to find it will help make your searching through that binder quite a bit easier. You are able to download a copy to use offline. You can add highlighting and you can add sticky notes just as you would with a physical copy of the binder. A couple of things I'd like to say about this is that moving to a paperless format allowed us to save quite a bit of time and preparation costs. I think, though, that the most important benefit is that we would see a drastic reduction in waste. Each one of those physical binders contains, as I mentioned, about 400 pages. Plus we have the tabs, plus we have the plastic binder itself. And the key thing here is that the document, it's only a draft and it has a very limited lifespan. The moment that council starts to make amendments to the budget, the document very quickly is out of date and is really not very useful as a reference for the approved budget because it doesn't reflect the approved budget. So I think that that's another good reason why moving to this paperless format is a good way to go. Having said that, if members of council do require a paper copy for whatever reason, we can print you a simplified version of that, or you're certainly welcome to print individual sections at your leisure. The e-binder will be posted to the town's website tomorrow morning, and a link will be sent to members of council, so you have that. Before we do move on, though, I do want to remind council that tonight is really, it's not about diving into the weeds or debating the budget. Our budget deliberations are scheduled for the end of January. So between then and now, you've got lots of time to ask your questions of staff, have us respond, give consideration to whatever changes you may want to see, and then have that ready for the debate at the end of January. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our CAO for a message from him.
Thank you, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to I'll just make a few comments and I'll be brief. I'll certainly want to give Michael enough time to get through this important document, but certainly I want to thank Michael and his team, the entire staff, in fact, for working on this so diligently. We kept touching base with Michael and the team, and I kept asking him if he wanted to stick on this date and commit to this date, because I knew how much work it was to hit this date on top of all the other things we had to do. But they remain committed to meeting that. And there was good reasons for that they wanted to do that, but it wasn't without a ton of effort. So I want to start off by thanking all of them for that. This budget is a draft budget. I think that's really important for all of us to remember, including the public, and this is up for debate and consideration. So when you look at the document, don't assume that this is what will be in the budget. It needs to be tested by council. It needs to be debated. The questions need to be asked. So that's a really important aspect of this. We were given the goalposts by council for us to work in to try and come up with a reasonable budget that could be considered, and we felt we've done that. We've given options for council to consider, on what we can deliver ultimately as the final budget document. So that's what this is about. This document's almost 2 months ahead of schedule from last year. So again, this was that ambitious goal that they set, as a finance team. We wanted to try and do it earlier because, you know, there are implications when our budget is a little bit later, it gets a little harder for us to actually execute that budget within the year. So we wanted to try to do that as early as possible. That's why, you know, we want to try and accelerate the time frame and give enough time for the questions and the debate to happen and to soak up, you know, the information that's being delivered. So again, I think tremendous work to get it done that way. Significantly more public input through our survey this year. We changed the survey methodology, and again, Michael will talk to the numbers in that, but significantly more input was received, and that is always good when you have more participation from the public in some of these avenues. So very pleased to see that. What I think we're all going to see as well is we've had another year of data accumulation. We focused really hard on that for the last couple of years, so we've been able to track numbers and make projections, I think, more accurately. I think as well as council, you're seeing a document that you're somewhat familiar with. You saw a similar document last year, so I don't think it will be as foreign for you when you look at some of the formats. We've tried to make it easy to read, but we also wanted to be very transparent on the data. That's why you're seeing a lot of data. We didn't want to hold back. We wanted to try and make it understandable, but we wanted to make it available. So that is another aspect of this. The other really important aspect of this is our budget process was really led by our staff. So the budget material that has come up came from the staff. It did not come from the senior leadership team. It came from the staff who are managing those areas. And that's a really important part of our sustainability strategy as an organization, to make sure everyone is familiar with what the budget is that they are managing, how we can make good decisions, and what we intend to do for the next year. In order to do that, there are certain contexts we have to take into consideration. That's what that next section is about. Obviously, the pandemic, you know, throws curveballs at all of us every day, and that tends to make us have to reevaluate what we can't do, what we can get, what we can't get, how we can work, and what can we reasonably accommodate. So we have to forecast that into anything we do. We have to balance our needs versus our wants. Obviously, there's lots of things we want to deliver for the town, but what can we reasonably afford to do, you know, given what our financial circumstances are? We certainly feel that we're going to be able to deliver a lot of things that the town needs, and you know, that's part of the budget document. But we think we did that in a responsible manner. Supply chain uncertainties. I think we all, you know, may feel that on a personal level, and certainly at the town, it's very difficult to get things. One of the benefits of not producing a hard copy budget is it's hard to get paper. And, you know, doing an e-binder certainly helps with that, but there's many things that are just very, very difficult to get and replace. And we had to use that as part of our forecasting. And again, one of the reasons why we want to get the budget process behind us so we can work on our supply chain. Inflation, we all know about what's happening with inflation. That's very high levels today, and certainly it costs more to buy almost literally anything if you can find it. Talent and resource scarcity. You'll see in our budget document again that the administration's committed to savings on the talent and resource side. It is hard to find talent to work in many of our areas. It's a highly priced commodity these days, and you know, we try to compete, and certainly we've been very successful in getting some tremendous talent on the team, and we'll continue to do that. But there's a lot of people doing a lot of multiple jobs and pulling this type of a document together. Government policy and programs. You heard about the MCR, Municipal Comprehensive Review. That's a really important, you know, program that we're paying attention to, and we're trying to influence, because there are consequences to the town long term on growth depending what happens there. So those types of policies are very, very influential in what can happen with the budget and the long term sustainability of our town. Things like natural heritage, things like the COVID policies that are put in place, and the impact of that on movement of people, visitors to our town, and our ability for businesses to conduct business. The other historical aspect that you'll find in the budget, which we comment on again, is the OMPF situation, which we brought some light to last year. And again, that has got serious historical consequences to this town in terms of what our reserve capacity is, and in terms of what other municipalities receive relative to Midland. We do not receive very much in terms of government funding. That is not to say it is incorrect. It is done correctly in terms of the calculation, but the facts are we do not receive as much government funding as some others. And that has led to some of the issues we see with our tax levy and some of the issues we see with our reserve situation. Go to the next page, Michael. So, in summary, obviously, we know that there are difficult decisions. We've all acknowledged that, but that's what we've all signed up for as counselors and part of this administration, is to face those difficult decisions and try and find the best option that will certainly help this community. And we think we've got the ability to do that. We'll go through the debate, we'll answer the questions, but I think at the end we can come up with a solution that will balance those needs. Midland continues to have a tremendous amount of pressure. We are literally a small city with the types of services we offer, and we get the pressures that come with those types of services. We don't have many financial levers to help pay for those things. We have to use the ones that we do have our disposal and try and make the best decisions available to do that. But certainly there are lots of pressures on us to deliver services that not only benefit Midland, but also to the areas around us. Our base budget supports services, and as I mentioned previously in one of the other topics this evening, there is a substantial amount of community support that you will see in the budget document. And that's an important fact that we need to acknowledge and determine how we want to continue to do that. So we've quantified that and share some information around the community support that's provided within that base budget, because we need to recognize that it's not just the services we provide, it's also very specific directed community support that's provided through that budget. The topics come up on a number of times here that in order to be competitive and sustainable as a town, we must grow and be competitive. There are other communities as well that are trying to grow and be competitive, and they're reinforcing their services and making themselves attractive to people to become residents or for businesses to set up. So there is a competitive aspect that we must be mindful of in Midland. If we fall backwards, then we risk losing some of those things that we need to be sustainable. Those tools and assets that are at our capability, things like, there are some assets that we have that we can consider leveraging to help with our tax levy or with our financial situation. There are user fee programs that we can use to help pay for some of the services that people use, ensuring that growth supports growth. But when there is new growth within the municipality, we make sure that comes with funds to support the growth for the services that are necessary. All of those things are things we're going to try and leverage, certainly as a town, and will help us to certainly get on a sustainable track. We're sharing, as I said, a considerable amount of data. We were considering trying to retract some of that, but we absolutely wanted to be as transparent as we could be without being overwhelming. So hopefully the e-binder allows people to navigate through it easily. But again, we welcome all questions. And last year we answered all of the questions, and we will certainly do that again this year. So certainly we look forward to doing that. I want to also express the confidence, I think, as an organization, the document represents. As we said, this is difficult decisions, but I'm really encouraged by the professionalism of our staff and the capability of our staff to present really good data that will allow us to make better decisions. And that's a credit to the caliber of the people doing the work, but also finding the time amongst all the things that they have to focus on to actually get that work done. So again, I can't express my appreciation enough for everyone who's participated in doing this. Delivering results of staff and council, while we're doing this through a pandemic, again, I think, both council and staff need to pause and just reflect that, through everything that we're doing, the pandemic is taking anywhere from 20, I think I said this before, anywhere from 20 to 70% of our time during the week, depending on what policy decisions coming down. But despite that, we continue to serve our residents. We continue to make improvements. We continue to get better information. we continue to make the changes that are necessary to improve our situation. And I'm thankful for everyone's support, including council, to do that. So I'll leave it with that. I do want to end again, though, with thanking all of our staff, and the committees and boards who met the timelines to help us get this document in place. Tremendous amount of work. Obviously, the finance team was front and center in leading that program. And finally, I really want to thank Randy and Angela who helped pull the actual document together. So there's lots of bits and pieces that have to come together, and those people worked long hours to try and hit this deadline. I want to thank them. So I'll turn it back to you, Michael.
Thank you for that, David. And yes, reiterating that without Angela and Randy, the document that you are going to get to see when you see those e-binders, that doesn't come together without their help. Certainly when finance, we turn that the supporting documents over to them, it doesn't look nearly as pretty as what you're going to get to see. So thank you both. All right, next up here, we have the council budget review process. The review process, it starts tonight with this presentation and the publishing of the e-binder first thing tomorrow morning. This process is designed to provide council with more time to review the budget, ask questions, and hear responses before the debate begins. And as David had mentioned, this year, the draft budget is actually 2 months ahead of where we were in 2021. With regard to some key dates that are coming up, January 13th, council will hear budget requests from agencies, boards, and commissions that are receiving significant funding from the town. On January 19th, we will open the floor for a public meeting where members of the public can express their thoughts about the budget. Budget deliberations will kick off on January 26th. We currently have 3 days scheduled for that, with the objective of reaching a budget approval by January 28th. And again, that's actually a full month earlier than we achieved in 2021. Starting December 13th, which is Monday, through to January 19th, council and the public can submit questions to budget@midland.ca, and staff will provide responses. I'll have a little bit more details on that at the end of the presentation. So council and staff, we certainly do value feedback from the public. And residents, of course, they know that they can always reach out to their councilor directly. But we've also offered 3 methods for residents to express their thoughts on the budget process. The first is the budget survey, which ran for the month of October. Second is the public meeting scheduled for January 19th. And then the third is the budget Q&A period running from December 13th to January 19th. I'd like to report that the 2022 budget survey, I would say it was a great success. And I'd also like to thank the 306 respondents who participated in that survey. The results are published in your budget binder at the very end, so you'll be able to see everything that they submitted to us. And I think you'll find there were some really good, thoughtful comments that were in there. That survey consisted of 18 questions, as well as the opportunity to provide further comments at the end. Last item I want to talk about before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of the budget is the key budget directions that council provided at the start of all of this. This is just a reminder of what we're working to. The first is that we would have a tax rate increase limited to the July 2021 annual inflation rate for Ontario, and that was to be for town services. That comes out to 3.5%. The next item was water budget with a 5% rate increase, wastewater with a 4% rate increase. We were to bring forward a 10-year capital plan consisting of a 1-year budget and a 9-year forecast. And we were to have the draft budget delivered in December. And I'm happy to say that we were able to achieve all of these objectives. So now we move into the little bit more detailed information here. The first table that you see there on the screen presents the draft tax rate impact of the operating budget. The rate increase is reported for the town as well as a blended rate. That blended rate adds the impact of property taxes levied for the County of Simcoe and the Board of Education, and it introduces some additional assumptions. The town's allocation of the county levy is assumed to increase by 2%. We don't yet know exactly what our allocation is, but the county did recently approve a 2% tax rate increase. As well, we've assumed that the education rate increase will be 0% again for 2022. As noted, council established an upset limit for the 2022 tax rate increase supporting town services. That upset limit was tied to that July 2021 inflation rate, and that came in at 3.5%, which, as you can see on the screen there, our subtotal is the little highlighted one there at 3.53. I should also note that as of October, that same index has increased to 4.9%. The draft 2022 tax-funded operating budget presented to you this evening does achieve the upset limit that we were shooting for, and that does result in about a $42 per $100,000 increase of assessment. After we account for the council and committee requests, agencies, boards and commissions, and the sustainable capital levy changes, the rate increase up to 6.3% or a blended rate of 4.82%. And that would require an additional $71 per 100,000 of assessment. One final note on this tax rate increase. The property tax reassessment cycle that was scheduled for 2020 has been delayed until at least 2023, again, due to the pandemic. And what this means is that the property values used in the calculation of tax rates are still at those 2016 levels, and they do not reflect current values. As a result, the full impact of rising service costs falls onto the tax rate. It has no impact on the amount of taxes that we need to raise, but it does mean that tax rates need to be higher than they otherwise would be. So now we're going to move on to discuss some of the major drivers that you're seeing here. So as you can see on that first chart again, we've categorized things as base budget, one-time, SLCF, which is service level change forms, council requests, agencies, boards and commissions, and sustainable capital levy. We're going to go through each of those in a bit more detail. The first one up is the base budget. I'm just going to hit on some of the highlights that are in here because it's quite a bit otherwise. You will find that we have some enhanced narratives for each of the major divisions in the e-binders, so you've got lots of time to review those and ask questions about what you see in there. So the base budget, it reflects the tax-funded cost increase related to providing current services at current service levels. The increase is typically reflective of things like contractual obligations, inflation, price volatility for commodities, labor agreements, setting aside funds for the replacement of assets, market adjustments for non-tax revenue sources, and in some cases, the impact of past decisions. Some of the notable items that are notable drivers that are in here, of course, are labor. We have IBEW and OPSU collective agreements. Both of those are requiring 1.75% cost of living adjustments. The Midland Professional Firefighters Association agreement, we've annualized that based on the July increase. And we also have a provision included in the budget for non-union group rate increase, which is equivalent to the IBEW and the OPSU. WSIB, CPP, EHT, all of those things have been increased in accordance with legislation. And we've added some student resources in areas such as planning, bylaw enforcement, and NSSRC to meet increasing service demands in those areas. Reserves are next on the list. We have our MPUC dividend replacement reserve. That draw has been reduced by $100,000, and that's just following the plan that was set in place a few years ago. Similar situation with our police transition reserve, which has a $50,000 reduction in the draw. COVID safe restart. This was something that we had budgeted for in 2021. It was $165,000 at that time. It's been removed as we expect to have it fully utilized in 2021 and not have anything available there for 2022. And then finally, the CIP reserve contribution of $150,000 has been removed in 2022 because that particular CIP program is winding down, although we'll be looking at new programs going forward. Next item on the list there is user fees and charges. Wherever possible, we've identified them to be increased for inflationary and market increases, and those are reflected in the budget. We do have some services such as planning that are in the process of conducting a more comprehensive fees review. And we do expect that some substantive changes will come of that, but there is a statutory process to be followed. You can see more about our fees and charges in that section of the binder. And I will also mention that we have prepared a service level change form for rate options that would fall outside the normal range. So you'll see that when you look at the service level changes. Apologies, too quick there on the clicking. A few other notable items that are in here. Insurance has once again raised an issue for us with an assumption of around about a 15% increase there. Realized assessment growth. This is actually helping our situation. That's giving us the benefit of about a 1.8% benefit to our tax rate. So that's a good thing. We have our King Street debenture that we're seeing the cost for the second tranche coming online in 2022, relatively small amount, $40,000. We have new regulatory requirements around stormwater infrastructure management. That's got about a $95,000 hit into our tax levy included in the base budget. There's also a service level change form in relation to this one. Policing. It's worth pausing on this one for a moment because it's a pretty substantial change year over year. In January 2022, the town will be transitioning over to what is referred to as the OPP standard billing model. And that has resulted in roughly a $450,000 savings over 2021. As per the plan for our police transition, those funds have been, those savings have been redirected to the police transition reserve. And that brings that reserve contribution up to almost $860,000 for 2022. So that's good news, because what it means is we've really turned the corner on that police transition reserve. We're now taking less out, we're putting more into the reserve than we are taking out by a substantial margin. So we're on to the right track to be paying that one back. David had mentioned the OMPF increase, the OMPF allocation. It's actually increased for the town of Midland to $620,000 for 2022. And in Midland's case, that is owing to below average assessment values. And you will see again in that budget that we've highlighted that Midland continues to receive less funding under that program than communities that are facing similar challenges, and that those differences do add up significantly over time. And you've heard that our mayor and members of senior leadership team have communicated those concerns and will continue to champion the need for revisiting that funding model. The last item that we have in our base budget is that the draft budget does include some recommendations to reevaluate some specific community support programs. However, the base budget does continue to provide significant support for community groups in the form of direct financial support, below market lease rates, in-kind services, subsidized user fees, exemptions from development charges for things like attainable housing. And I can tell you that when we started to tally this up for 2021, it amounted pretty quickly to over $1 million. So there's still quite substantial community group support embedded in that budget. We do have some one-time items that are coming up for 2022. I won't spend too much time on those. We have an election coming. So naturally, we have a budget in there for that. We have tax write-offs with the reassessment cycle dating now all the way back to 2016. Most of those appeals that were based on the 2016 reassessment have run their course, so we don't need as much in the way, we're not expecting as much in the way of write-offs. It's a tall ships year, so really looking forward to see those coming into town. And we've also seen a reduction for our training in travel and conferences. And that's just a reflection of recognizing that there's a reality of COVID that the likelihood is we will not be able to spend that money. So we've reduced it on a one-time basis. The next item on that list was service level change forms. Service level change forms, they're used to bring specific recommendations for substantive changes to services to the attention of council. So these are things that we really want to highlight. They're also used to seek approval for any increase to the town's approved staff complement. Staff have presented council with a variety of service level changes for 2022. Some of those are going to result in a net increase to the tax levy, while others will result in reductions. When taken together, the changes recommended for 2022 amount to about $205,000 decrease to the tax levy, which helps us to meet that upset limit that had been established through the council budget directions. One special note that I want to make here, when you look at that complement column and you see down to the bottom that it shows that we have a complement increase in 10. The reality is that actually 5 of those are really just a conversion of existing contract staff from their contract status to full-time. So although technically it does add to the complement, it's not actually adding more resources than we're currently using. It's just formalizing them as permanent staff complement. And a business case has been provided for each one of these, and you will find those in your binder so you can have more details on what's behind each of these items. Council and committee requests. Council and chairs of committees were asked to provide their requests for the 2022 budget. We did receive several requests this year, and it's from those areas that are noted up here on the slide. When taken together, the quantifiable net increase to the tax levy from these requests was about $390,000. I'm going to say the budget impact of some of the requests that we received, we couldn't quantify them in some instances. In those cases, the request was given an impact of 0. However, that request has still been included in the binder for your consideration. So when you look at that table, you'll be able to see some commentary on what we received and that we either couldn't quantify it, or perhaps in some cases it was already in the budget. Agencies, boards, and commissions. So we are partnered with a number of agencies, boards, and commissions, and to shorten this, we're going to call them ABCs. And that's for the provision of certain services. These budget requests come in at a total net increase of about $31,000 to the tax levy. Preliminary, the budget submissions that we received for a number of them are actually preliminary. The budget timelines for some of our ABCs, they just don't line up with the town. So any adjustments that are needed will be reflected in that budget staff report to council in January. So you'll see those coming through as amendments. Council will have the opportunity to ask representatives from the ABC's questions at the meeting planned for January 13th. And there's one extra table here that I wanted to highlight for you, and it's providing additional information about the town's investment in the library service. And this is something new. We haven't done this in the past. The library board's annual budget request, it's primarily concerned with the programming that takes place at the library. That's what the library board does. They run the programming. However, the town does own that building, and that building is a very large historical structure that has substantial renewal, rehab, and replacement requirements. And we thought that it would be important to demonstrate that the town's capital plan does include more than $920,000 in active projects and new requests to keep that big historical building in shape. Just a moment. So now we come to the sustainable capital levy. This was implemented as part of the 2019 budget, and it was intended to be a 1% annual levy to support the replacement, renewal, and rehabilitation of tax-funded municipal infrastructure. I can report that the plan has been inconsistently applied over the years for various reasons, and that we're now playing catch up. Certainly, I mean, one of those reasons last year was we were in the midst of a pandemic, so we elected to freeze the contribution at the previous year's rate as a cost mitigation measure. But again, we're now in a situation where we are having to play some catch up. The graphs on this slide, they show 2 distinct forecasted uncommitted reserve balances over the next 10 years. The key differences between these 2 forecasts are the reinstatement of that 1% annual levy, and that proceeds from disposals of certain properties would be directed to fund municipal infrastructure. There's also a second line, that blue line that you're seeing on each of these graphs. That is our targeted uncommitted reserve balance. And that target is based on the town's financial policies, which set out that we should be looking at what we've historically spent it as a bit of a gauge as to how much we should be keeping on hand to fund emergencies and unexpected things. So that first graph, that's the status quo. That forecast assumes that council will choose not to reinstate the 1% annual levy, and that proceeds from disposition of properties will not be reinvested in municipal infrastructure. And as you can see clearly, that does not set us on a sustainable path. That red line just keeps on trending down, getting further and further into the negative. It's not sustainable. The second graph shows an alternative that shows the alternative that is reflected in the draft budget. The forecast assumes that the 1% annual levy will be reinstated and that the net proceeds from disposition of various properties that are not required for municipal operations will in turn be reinvested in municipal infrastructure. You can see it is a marked improvement over the status quo, but it does still result in a significant overcommitment of these reserves in the near term. To that end, we have prepared a service level change request that recommends a temporary increase in the levy that's going to help close that gap. Won't completely solve it, but it gets us pretty close. So you'll see that when you look into your binder. That brings us around to considerations for tax levy reductions. Council may decide that they feel that the tax rate increases that we're looking at here are just they're too much. They're not something that they feel residents can afford. So you'll be looking naturally to what are the types of things we can do about that. Broadly speaking, we can look at things like reducing or eliminating services or programs. We can increase user fees, although that one can be a little less certain on the outcome. And you can also examine some of the requests from our agencies, boards, and commissions. That is something that you are able to challenge them on if you wish. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over. That's it for the tax levy component of this. And I'm going to turn it over now to Andy Campbell to talk a little bit about user rates.
Thank you, Michael. Members council, some of this presentation you've seen before, because for the last few years, I've been trying to present the costs for water, wastewater, and any of the increases. It's all about our asset management. And as you know, our job is to provide safe and clean water and compliant wastewater into our receiving bodies. So Ministry of Environment compliance is number one, what we need to do. We've renewed our license for water this year. That gives us another 6 years of operating direction. We've completed both our master plans for water and wastewater, and the results of those were built into our capital plan over the next 10 years. And we've talked in the past, as you saw those plans, there is significant investment that needs to be maintained just to keep our current assets going because they are aging, but also dealing with growth and the county MCR process. Adam mentioned earlier, as did the mayor, some of the consequences if we don't get growth. We've assumed a certain level of growth to 2041 in our planning. And right now that's a contradiction to what the county might be proposing. Next slide, Michael. So just as an example here, from a water infrastructure age, this represents basically the build out of the town. As the town grew, it needed more water and wastewater services. And you can see we started building our infrastructure at the turn of the previous century. And you can see in the 1960s, 70s, we had a lot of growth in town, and then it dropped off, and then back 1990s and 2000s, we've had more growth. We're about to start into another growth spurt in this decade. We have about 3,000 units of housing that are in the planning process right now, which is another huge spurt that we see. But one of the outcomes of this is the pipes in the ground age. They last 80 to 100 years. And we have to plan on that replacement cost. Next slide. So if you look at, when do those pipes have to be replaced? This is just projecting at current day costs. If you built something in 1970s, 80 years later in 2050, you have to start replacing that and you start to have costs. Our wastewater plant, it's at 25 years of age right now. A lot of that concrete and steel that's, gets corroded by the effluent that's in that wastewater plant. We're getting to end of life on some of our equipment. The motors, the steel supports are falling off our motors and some of our tanks, and we have to spend money. So one thing we can always say with water and wastewater, it's not will we need to spend money in the future. We know we will. And part of asset management is planning for that and putting some money in the bank today so that we'll have money for tomorrow. The next slide. This is the wastewater example, and you see some very high spikes in, around 2030. Really, it's between 2025 and 2030, depending how our construction goes in our plant. But as I said, our plant's coming to end of life, and we know right away whatever we fix today, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, in 2080, we're going to have another hit. And just given the cost of inflation, it will be more in the future. Next slide. So turning that into the financial plan, we look at water, but this graph it's hard to see in here, but you'll see it in your binder a little bit easier to read. Basically, the blue and the green are the expenses that we have. We've got revenue coming in, which are shown by the bars that are shown there, but it's really the black line is what we're trying to do. And the black line is how much money do we have in the bank or in our reserve fund after we do our capital improvements, after we pay our staff, buy our chemicals, and what do we have left? And you can see in here, we've been going at, for water, at 5% increase. And I've been for the last couple of years, and we're projecting again, we need to continue with a 5% increase. If we continue for this entire period at 5%, we're falling below into the negative at around 2024. We're coming back into the positive, but we're basically projecting a 5% increase for the next 10 years almost, if things don't change for our water plan. And that negative in 2024, how we get out of that is by borrowing money. And that's why it jumps back up, because we have taken debt out in that year. Next slide. Same thing on water. Again, the graphs are showing our expenses and our revenues. And again, that black line, it's got a couple more very large negative amounts, because we have some, as the previous discussion on the assets showed, we have some major projects to do in wastewater because of the age of the plant. We get out of those negative positions through borrowing. So those two financial plans, we're looking at about $17 million in borrowing on the water side and $9 million on the wastewater side to get to that black line. And that's assuming our revenues and expenses stay as planned. Last year, I said we were in the $25 million debt range over the next few years. We're still projecting between water and wastewater to be about $25 million in debt. But again, the rates increases, they have to cover the principal and interest payments to repay that debt. Taking on debt isn't free. Next slide. So when we look at the user fees, the 5% and 4%, you can see the increases for the average user, 170 cubic meters a year. But when you look at it from a weekly basis, It's about 41 cents for water and 38 cents for wastewater. So although 4 and 5% sound like a big number on a weekly basis for those very critical services that every household and resident relies on, we're a quarter cup of coffee on a weekly basis is what the cost of that is. Next slide. And when we look at some of our municipal comparators, Midland, you can see the bar there. We're kind of in the average. We're not the highest cost for water, wastewater in the county, but we're not the lowest. But then we're one of the larger municipalities. So even with these rate increases, we're still in line with our neighboring municipalities. And I think that's my last slide. I'll turn it back to Michael.
Thank you, Andy. So that brings us back to the greater capital plan. We've talked about tax levy. We've talked about user rates. Now we're talking about the capital plan. So for 2022, Council is being presented with a 10-year capital plan that consists of a 1-year capital budget and a 9-year capital forecast. And what that means is you're going to be approving spending for 2022. But any years beyond that, it's being presented for information purposes only, so that you're not approving any spending out beyond that. Master plans combined with the knowledge and expertise of staff have allowed us to prepare a capital forecast, and that capital forecast has an estimate of about $165 million in investment in infrastructure to support growth and to address those replacement, renewal, and rehab needs for existing infrastructure. So as shown on this graph, the 2022 plan can be further broken down into $17.4 million that we've carried forward from prior years. So those are budgets that you may have approved in 2021, 2020, and potentially even earlier, where those projects they've not been completed yet. So they're being carried forward to this point. And then we also have another $21.6 million in new requests. And in a little bit, we'll get into what are we asking for that's $21.6 million. We will get to that. So up next, this first chart provides a breakdown of the 2022 capital budget by asset type. So as you can see, we're planning to undertake significant work on major infrastructure such as roads and facility improvements. Taken together, those areas account for more than 75% of the capital budget. So those investments are in hard infrastructure, roads and facilities and such. Some of the larger projects that we've got on the list, they're on the side there. We've got Midland Point Road, Fuller to Portage, a new fine bubble aeration, and no, I can't remember whether that's at our water plant or our wastewater plant. Headworks upgrade, East Pressure Tank Zone, Bomb Beach construction, and 7th Street reconstructions. So those are some of the big ones. You will see that the town does not have sufficient reserves to fund these projects directly. And as a result, there is effectively no choice but to borrow funds for these larger projects. In this second chart that you see down in the bottom left, that shows the breakdown of the 2022 capital funding plan. And as you can see, the forecasted requirement for borrowing, it tends to correlate quite nicely with those major capital works. So when we're doing big roads projects, we're doing big improvements to our facilities, such as those headworks upgrades. Those are good candidates for debt financing because they're such long-lived assets, and quite frankly, they're very expensive, and we don't have enough money in the bank to just write a check for them. Speaking of capital plan and how we're funding that plan, with the exception of grants, the town basically has two options for funding its capital plan. One is reserves and the other is debt financing. As noted, we do not have sufficient reserves to fund our capital plan directly, and as a result, debt financing is a significant component of our funding plan. The charts on this slide, they reflect the balance between reserves and debt financing that we're striking in that capital plan. And there is a direct relationship between these funding options. If we make a decision to place less reliance on borrowing, it means that we will have lower reserve balances and vice versa. The first graph there is there's a total reserves. It's also, you could also call it our consolidated reserve forecast. In that first chart, it shows a 10-year forecast for the town's reserves. And there are 4 lines on this graph. The first one is red. Those are obligatory reserves, which generally means that there's some external restriction on how you can use them. Blue is our discretionary reserves. Those are the reserves that they tend to be our most versatile, most flexible in what we can use them for, but there are still internal constraints on some of them. The purple line is our MPUC reserves. Those have been split out because of the special nature of the way we've set that money aside in investments and how that is to be used and deployed. And then green is total. So as shown, our total reserves, they're in a positive position over the next 10 years. But that is primarily owing to the debt financing reflected in our funding plan. But the picture, it really is, it's not as rosy as it appears to be on the surface. And I think that there's some other important factors that need to be considered here. And the first one is the composition of our reserves. So the total reserve forecast, it does reflect the more than 60 reserves and reserve funds that the town currently maintains. Almost none of the reserve balance that we have available to us is for general purpose, for tax-funded capital needs. Most of that balance is held in our MPUC reserves. We also hold significant balances in DC's water and wastewater. As well, as we know, both our Midland Bay Landing Property Reserve and our Police Transition Reserve, those are currently in deficit positions with some plans to how to get them out of deficit. So as noted, the town is playing catch up on its tax capital reserves, and we do have very little flexibility in this area. And it's that blue line, that discretionary reserves that you see dipping down into the negatives. That's the one that's the big concern for us. And we need to take some corrective action there because that is our most flexible set of reserves. And it's problematic for that to be in the negatives. The other thing is the key assumptions that are baked into having this relatively positive outlook here. One of those assumptions, of course, is the reinstatement of that sustainable capital levy. The proceeds of disposals from disposal of assets being directed to municipal infrastructure, and as well, critically, that growth resulting from DC collections comes in at a reasonable amount starting in 2023. If any of those things don't happen, we can run into some issues. So some of the risks that we could see here that could jeopardize what is otherwise a fairly positive outlook: the economy, if it impacts our growth rates; a political decision at some senior level of government, such as how the municipal comprehensive review rolls out; council decisions on reserve contributions, proceeds on property sales, and escalating prices. All of those things can have detrimental impacts on what we see here. So the other side of this coin, remember we said there's really 2 options. You can take from reserves or you can borrow. The other side of the coin is borrowing. So the second chart shows a 10-year forecast for the town's annual repayment limit. That repayment limit is a measure developed by the province to limit the debt level for municipalities. This chart compares the estimated debt payments to the 25% limit imposed by the province, that's the blue line, and the 20% limit that is often used as a best practice by municipalities. In relation to those limits, you've got the repayment bars, and there's 3 components to those bars. The orange component reflects the payments for outstanding debt, and there's really nothing you can do about those payments. That debt's already been issued, and we have a repayment plan for it. The blue, that reflects estimated debt payments for projects that have already been approved. Very, very small component of this. And gray reflects the estimated debt payments for projects that have not yet been approved. So we haven't totally committed to that path as of yet. And those gray bars, they coincide with the borrowing required up on that total reserves chart. So as you can see, the message here is that we do have adequate debt capacity over the forecast period. However, before we actually commit to to issuing that debt, we need to consider factors such as affordability for tax and ratepayers, prevailing interest rates, long-term sustainability of the ultimate funding sources for repaying that debt. Okay, I'm sure you'll be happy to know we're on the last slide. So we're going to start just with a reminder of some of the key dates. December 8th, obviously that's tonight, we're getting the presentation. January 13th, ABCs do their presentation. January 19th is our public meeting. January 21st, that's our final budget Q&A response. And then January 26th to 28th, that is the budget deliberations and hopefully approval of the 2022 budget. That budget Q&A session, it runs from December 13th, which is Monday, through to January 19th. You've got lots of time in there to consider the budget information you've been presented with. And Mohammed Hassanen, he will be coordinating the receipt of those questions from councillors, the media, and the public. And I'm asking you to please use the email address that you see noted up on this slide, budget@midland.ca, to submit your questions. I'm asking you to use that because if we have just this one gate, it's a lot easier for us to keep track of the questions that are coming in than if we're getting them by emails to who knows who and phone calls and all that sort of thing. Having one gate is definitely a much better way of ensuring that your question gets answered. We will be releasing a list of the questions and responses. Generally, it will be on Fridays. So currently we have December 17th, January 7th, 14th, and 21st is the days we expect to release them. The list is going to be shared with all members of council. So the idea there, of course, is if one person asks a question and you all see the response, we shouldn't be receiving the same question from another councillor. We do ask that you submit your questions before the end of day each Wednesday, just to allow us a little bit of time to get your questions answered. We will make every effort to get your question responded to in that week, but there may be some instances where the questions are just, there's too many components to it and we may not be able to get to it that particular week. If any of you require any assistance with the e-binder, once you have your link, please reach out. Be happy to walk you through how to use it. It's very, very simple. I think you'll find it's pretty user-friendly once you're into it. That concludes the presentation. And if you have any questions specific to the presentation, we'd be happy to take those at this time. I'm not hearing any questions. Oh.
I'm always good for one. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy. Great presentation. I'm still trying to absorb it here. I assume this presentation is in the binder, the e-binder, so we can review it again.
The presentation is going to be added to the agenda as an addendum, so you'll have the actual presentation. I will say the binder's got a whole lot more in it, so you'll find that there's quite a bit more there to look at.
Okay, great. So I just had a quick question that's just vanished from my brain all of a sudden. Geez, it must be getting late. Oh, yeah, I remember what it was now. So I'm really happy to hear that we're achieving some savings on the police front. You know, it's supposed to be $1 million, but I'll take $500,000. But just circling back to, I think it was last year when I asked you how this whole future police savings concept worked. And I believe you described it that we were billing effectively at a higher rate than what it was really costing us for OPP. So I'm just making numbers up. If OPP was $5 million a year for policing, we were billing our residents as if it was 5.6 or something. And then that difference we were, using to put back into that future police savings in the anticipation that one day the new billing model would be cheaper. And when are we actually going to get to the point where we bill the residents for the true cost of what the OPP slide across the table? Because that difference right now that I think you're talking about, the 500 million, is based kind of on like you know, here's a dishwasher that's worth $800, but I'm going to sell it to you for 1,000 and say you just saved 200. You know, like I'm not suggesting we're doing anything untoward. I just want this to be really clear and transparent that we're in the hole for whatever it is, $4 million in that future police savings because of disbandment costs and legal costs and everything else. And we are hopefully seeing a downward trajectory on the cost of policing with this new model. Now that we moved off the transition model, when do we start to kind of build on that 1-to-1 ratio and then hopefully reap the savings that, you know, all of this expense went towards? Hopefully I've articulated this clearly enough, Michael. I'm not trying to confuse things.
No, I think so. So yes, Councillor Gordon, I'll take a run at that. So the way it is currently set up in our budget, we have a forecast from the OPP, and for argument's sake, let's say that's $4.5 million. If we didn't have the money that we had spent on the police transition and funded from a reserve that is in a deficit because it didn't have a funding source at that point in time, then in our tax levy, we would have the tax levy at $4.5 million. But that's not the situation we find ourselves in. There were transition costs, and those costs they're currently sitting around 3 million in change or so. And what we're seeking to do, according to following the plan that was set in place, is we want to recoup those transition costs before we bring our tax levy to fund policing down to that 4.5 million. So today, despite the invoice from the police being 4.5 million, our tax levy is going to include an amount for roughly $5.3 million, just talking about the 800K we're going to put into that reserve. So that difference is being directed towards the reserve to pay that down. And when that reserve gets to zero, then we say, all right, bring it right back in line with exactly what we're getting billed. And on that day, our residents get to see the full benefit on the tax levy of the transition to the OPP. Now, that's one aspect of it. There is another issue, and that was when the plan was initially put in place, a decision was made to advance some of the savings that were projected to happen. So it's money that we are taking out of the reserve each year and putting into our budget, and it sits in place of what would otherwise be a tax levy. And that amount is coming down every single year. So this year it was reduced by another $50,000. So I think we're taking 400K or something out of the reserve on that, under that notion of advancing of savings. So that advancing of savings is drawing this whole thing out a little bit longer than it otherwise would be, because we're pulling money out of the reserve at the same time that we're putting money into it. And this is the first year where we have been able to turn the corner and we're actually putting more money into the reserve than we are taking out. And we're actually putting in twice as much as we're taking out, essentially. So it's on the right path now. It's on the downward trend. And now it's just a matter of how long until we are, we've completely repaid that reserve. And I think back of napkin math, it was going to be maybe by 2028 or something at the current rate of repayment, it would be fully paid off, and we would bring all of the savings back into the operating budget to the benefit of the tax levy.
Thank you for that clarity. That was even better than I remember it, but it's worth repeating because we have hit that turn now. We're on the new billing model, which, it was a crapshoot. It could have been more, it could have been less. So let's hope that the calls for service and the other calculations that go into this remain at or below what we're at, and we can keep enjoying those savings. But thank you very much for your clarity as usual.
Thank you. I'm not sure. I disconnected. I'm not sure what happened, but I apologize. I'm back. Someone else move this forward? Do you want me to take over? I'm not sure who was, but I'll say that as I am. Any other questions with regards to clarity? I don't want to get into a discussion of the budget at this point. We have a public meeting coming up. We have the final budget questions and response, and then 3 days deliberation. I I would ask that we save all the questions with regards to the budget for them, but if you have any clarification questions, please hold your card up and I'll get to you. Am I seeing none? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy, Mr. Deneau, and Mr. Campbell for the presentation this evening. Is there an motion for this, or are we just receiving this as information, Madam Clerk?
I believe we're just receiving it as information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next, which is our COVID-19 update. And Mr. Deneau, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Thank you all. I know it's been a long day, long evening for everyone.
Sorry, excuse me. If I'm not sure if Michael can take down his screen so we can make full screen. I have a hard time seeing everybody. I apologize. Thank you. All yours, Mr. Deneau.
Thank you. I'll be brief on my my COVID update. I know it's been a long day and long evening for everyone. Suffice to say, I think we all understand that we're seeing a bit of a surge, certainly in the COVID situation, 16% higher this week than the previous week in Simcoe, Muskoka County. The chief medical officer and all our health professionals are watching our hospital capacity quite closely. I don't think there's an issue yet, but that's certainly one of the main factors that they're going to consider should they need to take additional measures. 30 people currently hospitalized, 6 are in ICU across Simcoe, Muskoka. At this time, 0 Omicron cases. However, I think there is some reporting that there might be potential of that in Simcoe, Muskoka. So we'll have to watch the news on that. 22 cases in Midland in December alone. So that's a significant amount of cases relative to what we've seen in some of the previous months. Interesting that only 1 case across North Simcoe is over 65. So in all of North Simcoe in December, only 1 of those cases is someone older than 65. All the cases in North Simcoe, with that exception, are less than 65. In terms of the vaccination rate in Midland, 89.7% of their first dose, 87.3% have their second dose, and I'm sure they'll be adding a new stat that said who has their booster dose soon, because I think we are starting to administer that in addition to the children 5 to 11 at our facilities. But our vaccination rate, as I mentioned, 87.3 who have the second shot is higher than the Simcoe average, which is 84.6. So again, continued, I think, concern on the surge. I think the chief medical officer has published some information publicly that says we're watching it very closely. We've seen other health units impose restrictions on capacity, the emergency brake, if you like, calling that in places to the north of us. And I think in the Southwest, they also made that determination as well, where they restricted capacity in some venues and businesses. We're not there yet, but I think anything can happen depending on where this goes. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Deputy Ross, unless there's questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deneau. Any questions for the CEO, Councilor Main?
I just wanted to make a brief comment that greatly appreciate all the efforts of the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, not only in the contact tracing and the pandemic management, but in the vaccine rollout. My son, we attended the vaccine clinic upstairs at the community hall. So shout out to Nurse Betty. She did a great job. And I thought it was a kids vaccine clinic, but it's still a community-based clinic. And it was just a comment for Randy Fee and all the communication staff, just to try to keep communicating to people where the boosters are available. I know there's a couple of pop-up clinics coming. The pharmacy downtown Midland has been fantastic. I got my booster and my flu shot left and right arm in one day. So it's super convenient, and pop-in availability, it's been really great. So I just wanted to comment on that because we know now that for a lot of people that got the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer or Moderna, they have about a 6 to 7 month window. And that for a lot of people who got vaccinated in May, early July, which was a majority of Canadians, that's putting us on the edge of their vaccine efficiency kind of waning out. So really remind people to get boosted up, get the third shot. Don't feel any vaccine guilt on that. There's lots of vaccine for everybody, and go out and get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Main. Any other questions or comments? I see none. Thank you, Mr. Deneau. Appreciate it. Next up, we have notice of motion, and I see Mayor Strathern has a motion that he'll bring forward for the next council meeting. Mayor Strathern, you care to read it for the record, and we'll have discussion at the next meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a motion that's identical to what's being presented to Penetanguishene Council this evening. It arises out of the fact that well, we have a new traffic circle which is designed to move traffic more efficiently. We still have the issue of people going from an 60 to an 80 to a 50, back to an 80, back to a 60 on that stretch of highway between the entrance to the GBGH and to the going up to the Angels, almost to the Angels of the gravel pit in Penetanguishene, basically. So
yeah, please read it for the record, and we'll just have discussion at the next meeting.
Next meeting, yes. So it's the motion basically is, whereas the County of Simcoe, in partnership with the towns of Penetanguishene and Midland, have recently completed the County Road 93 roundabout project, and whereas the County of Simcoe implemented speed limits on County Road 93 when approaching, exiting, and within the roundabout, including a variation between 50 kilometers an hour to 80 kilometers per hour in less than a 3-kilometer distance. And whereas a consistent speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour on County Road 93 leading to the roundabout in both Penetanguishene and Midland should be implemented in order to increase safety and avoid motor vehicle collisions caused by winter weather conditions. Now, therefore, the Council of the Town of Midland formally requests that the County of Simcoe implement the 60 kilometer per hour speed limit on County Road 93 from the new roundabout for approximately 1 kilometer towards the town of Penetanguishene and 1 kilometer towards the town of Midland, which would reduce the 80 kilometer per hour.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Look forward to the discussion at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other notice of motion to bring forward this evening? I see none. We have general announcements. Any general announcements tonight? Councilor Main.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I want to give a special thank to Gordon McKay, past mayor, who chaired a housing committee, housing town hall on Monday. One of the panelists was Stuart Strathern, beloved executive director Adam Farr, and Arfona Swears, pardon me, from Simcoe County. So it was a great information session on housing. And so if you have questions or comments or concerns about housing, the Engaging Midland topic on affordable housing is still available for you to provide commentary. Huge shout out to operations staff, Jay Crouch and the Civitans on all their great Christmas display. As Mr. Deneau, you can see behind him, beautiful tree lighting. The vision from Jay Crouch from Splash Events, he went out and purchased a lot of the decorations that you see downtown, some new ornaments for the tree, some new greenery for the street poles, which look fantastic. And shout outs to staff for putting up all the new flags and the lights. That was just great. Also, if you haven't heard, there's a new food bank in town. It launched last week. So special thanks to Alexandria Hamlin for all her work to launch the Georgian Bay Food Network. And if you want to support them, it's gbfn.org. So that's great. Thank you so much, Alexandria, for all your hard work. And shout out to Dan Travers. We saw some great news coming out of the research into the cenotaph, and they're doing some great history and finding out some of the names are misspelt. Some names they're not even people. They don't even exist. So they're doing a great job of doing the research of all these amazing heroes that fought for our community. So thank you, Dan, and all the Legion crew on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Main. Any other announcements this evening? I see none. I'd like to just take the opportunity to wish belated happy Hanukkah, and of course I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and to please support your local merchant at this time more than ever, and don't forget free parking downtown Midland. All right, we'll move on to close this meeting. Moved by Councilor Main, second by Councilor Cunningham, that the committee rise and report. All those in favor? So carried. Your worship, it's all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Back in the formal session, so we have a motion to adopt the actions of the Committee of the Whole. It's moved by Councillor Prost, seconded by Councillor Main, that the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole for the meeting of December 8th, 2021 be adopted as resolutions of Council. Comments or questions from Council with regard to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that carries. Next, we have motions for which notice was given, and we have a motion moved by Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Cunningham, over to you.
Yes, and I believe I have this seconded by Councillor Olszewski. So I have a motion that the implementation of a community safety zone at or around the bus stop at Portage Park be considered, and that a staff report with recommendations be brought to council for consideration at a future meeting. As we all know, over here in Ward 3, we have a couple of collector roads, which, while they are within the limits of the town of Midland, do not have one sidewalk, whereas most collector roads have two sidewalks. And they also have sidewalks plowed on both sides of the road all year long. As winter approaches and lands this beautiful, whatever, how many inches of snow we have upon us, that gets more dangerous for our school children, not safer. Although we have people saying, you know, bumper cars, if you're sliding off those banks, are safer for driving, they're not safer for the kids on the road. Anything that we can do that will help make this safer over in our collector roads with no sidewalks, I think it behooves us to do. So I would like to see some recommendations. And I know up on Victoria Street, we have sections with no sidewalk as well. Everton, Harborview, Fuller, Midland Bay Point, we have a lot of places where we have kids and no sidewalks. I think this is a step that can help remind people, because I recognize that most of those areas are local traffic, residents driving home to their passing the neighbors on their way home, and especially Midland Point Road, that's a neighbor situation, especially in Everton. This is a neighbor situation where we want to be good neighbors to each other. So a reminder of what it means to be a good neighbor in the format of a community safety zone to catch attention, I think is a step. It's not the perfect step. I mean, the perfect step would be sidewalks on both sides of the road, but that's not something that we are. Councillor Olszewski vehemently agrees, and I know a lot of people would. It would be amazing if we could do that, but whatever we can do, and I think this is a step that we can look at. And if there are other recommendations that staff can bring forward to deal with collector roads with no sidewalks within the town of Midland, I think that is essential.
Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Gordon wishes to speak. Any other persons wishing to speak to this? Councillor Main. Councillor Gordon, please.
Thank you. I support this wholeheartedly. It's a, it's a compromise in my mind. It was nice to see the ability to include collectors in our new draft plan, and that was the staff being responsive to input from council and from the community. So kudos to them. The sad reality is, though, with the scoring system, there just isn't a lot we can do through that policy. So we have this ability, with or without the policy, to impose basically extra fines, so that when there is police enforcement, if you are stopped, you will pay more dearly for that offense. So this is not a magic bullet. It's not people that disobey speed signs are going to disobey this other one too. It just means that on the occasion where there is enforcement that happens to line up with catching a speeder, which happens infrequently, but that's the reality of it. When it does, it's going to cost you more. And I think that's probably about the best we can do right now, because we don't have the dough for the sidewalks. As we just saw, it's rather depressing looking at the state of our reserves and the projections. So I think anything we can do is better than nothing. This is the price of metal for the signs and adjusting the bylaw. And then, of course, educating the public about what this means and asking our policing partners if they can dwell in those new community safety zones and take a zero tolerance approach, make the province some money, I don't even know if we get any of it, but basically let people know that it's going to cost you more for speeding in these zones because they've been declared a safety zone, not because we have no other things to do with our time, but because we don't have any other tools that can adequately apply to these areas. So I appreciate Councillor Cunningham bringing this forward. If she didn't, I would have. I wholeheartedly support this. It's a no-brainer in my mind, and it's the best we can do right now until we come up with some more tools or find bags of cash.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Main.
Thank you. Well, in all seriousness, I mean, talking about sidewalks on both sides, it is in the transportation master plan to look at a pathway along Midland Point. I've talked to the residents when we were discussing traffic calming about bicycle lanes or paved shoulders, which are kind of the same, a little bit different. So if we were talking about culvert work on that section of Midland Point, that's just an extra added curiosity that what would be the cost of paved shoulders, and if we're doing construction work, maybe you add that into the resurfacing. But anyways, that I think is the ultimate goal. It would be to have a mixed use pathway or paved shoulder on both sides, as our planning suggests. So I don't know if that's a short term, medium term, or long term in the transportation plan, but it has been noted. So, you know, let's move forward with that fun project. And maybe also consider a community safety zone too. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So are there any comments against the motion? Put it that way. I don't see any. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So there we go. Congratulations, and we'll look forward to the staff report on how to deal with community safety zone on Midland Point Road. Next, we have the bylaws for this evening, and they're moved by Councillor Downer, seconded by Councillor Olszewski. The following bylaws: bylaw 2021-53, amend zoning bylaw 2004-90 as amended, respecting 9457 County Road 93. Bylaw 2021-55, agreement with the town of Penetanguishene for the provision of Ontario Building Code enforcement services. Bylaw 2021-56, interim levy, tax levy for 2022 and to provide for penalty and interest. And bylaw 2021-57, authorize temporary borrowing from time to time to meet the current expenditures for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022. These be passed and enacted. Any comments or questions with respect to the bylaws? Seeing none, then all in favor? Thank you, and that too carries. A motion by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Gordon, that bylaw 2021-58, being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting with closed session held on December 8th, 2021, be passed and enacted. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. And the final motion for the evening, moved by Councillor Main, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ross, that this regular meeting of council with closed session adjourn at 10:09 p.m. All those in favor? Thank you very much, and I'd like to wish all of council a very Merry Christmas, since we won't be meeting again, and also to staff and to the residents of the town of Midland, and hopefully we'll see the generosity of the season throughout the municipality in support of shelters and food banks. So Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas and a happy holiday to everybody.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.